Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Luffy Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What if Luffy consumed multiple devil fruit? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Approaching Raftel, the wind was dead in their sails yet the ship approached quickly. After the sea and its horde fighting them every step of the way, it now seemed eager for them to make their destination. The island itself was a beauty, multicolored trees sprouting all over, with different shapes and textures that meant no one was like another. It was unnatural yet it was nature itself, thrumming with a power men weren't meant to understand. This island was precious. It held the world's mysteries, everything it had to offer. Of this Roger was certain, as surely as if it was the one truth of the world. His men scramble, snapped out of their revelry while they try to cast anchor. The ocean doesn't let them. The anchor unable to find purchase while the currents pull them towards the island. Roger stands on the Oro Jackson's figurehead, laughing heartily. Rayleigh calls him to come help, damn it, but there was nothing to be done. The ocean wants them here and there was nothing they could do to fight her. The ship smashes into the shore, burrowing into the land, but there is no impact. Instead it seems as if the hull cuts through, bullying the beach out of the way, a rare possibility with waterlogged sand. Roger peers down at the shore. He can pick out shapes but unsure of what he's seeing from on high. Roger, don't you dare dash. Whatever the rest of the threat was going to be, Roger doesn't care to hear. He steps off the figurehead, letting himself fall to the beach. No, not a beach, because he doesn't fall with a thud onto sand but rather with a crunch. His legs sink in deep and jagged edges poke at him through his pants. He looks down. A skull gazes up from a bed of broken bones. Roger glances along the Liar's beach. There isn't a speck of sand, or shingle, or stone. Instead, wrapping around the island, are piles upon piles of bones. All of them are mismatched and sun-bleached. The most recognizable bones being the skulls, and when he tries to focus on them, he can see they're not all human. Different structures from different types of humans, fishmen, and minks. Farther down, what can be mistaken as a boulder is a giant skull, buried halfway by more bones. They move with the flow of the waves lapping at the shore, small finger bones getting caught up and tumbled around by the gentle movement. Is this where the sea sends all those that die on her waves? Rayleigh breathes, jumping to join him and sinking up to his knees. Roger grabs him. There is nothing solid beneath them, just layers upon layers of packed bone. It could be. Roger laughs. He would bet that the seafloor around them stretched for miles looking much like this. That raftel soil is bone white. Ready to explore, men? A cheer goes up as they lower ropes and disembark the Oro Jackson. Roger pats his mighty ship's hull, thanking her for the journey here. He steps through the bones, making his way boldly onto the island proper. Each of the trees is more magnificent up close. Some extend straight up as great trunks before curling at the peak into whimsical spirals. Others have sprawling branches weaving and wiggling through their neighbors. One sprouts up like a fountain, branches curling back over into the ground in different tiers. There are shapes engraved into what Roger wouldn't dare to call wood. It is too bright, too fantastical. Each with unique patterns, some swirling, some jagged, all like a master woodworker had spent centuries chiseling them in excruciating detail. Some were embossed, others engraved, all crowding along every trunk and branch. On any other plant, it would be a horrifying sign of disease, but each of these sprouts tall and strong. One could have spent a lifetime exploring the forest, categorizing all the differences, but unfortunately Roger doesn't have that luxury. He bulldozes on through the underbrush. The crew is on guard, weapons clutched close while they look this way and that for some sort of danger. Given their journey here, Roger had expected some sort of grand beast, one last big battle, a big hurrah. But the island is strangely peaceful. Silent, even. Not a bird flies overhead, no lizards run through the foliage. And then, as they approach the center of the island, there is laughter. Some startle at the sound in the silent forest but Roger grins and changes course towards it. Caution falls by the wayside. There weren't meant to be people here, and as Roger pushes aside the leaves of a long willow-like tree, that stretches up towards the sky higher than a mountain top but almost as narrow as a barrel, he can't say he's sure there are. People that is, because this is certainly someone. They could look almost human if not for part of his brain insisting something is wrong. They don't look old, nor young, not even somewhere in the middle. It was as if the concept of age, of time, doesn't touch them. Any features Roger can make out slip away from his awareness as soon as he notices them, as if they are forever shifting, or were they even there to begin with? Was it just his mind playing tricks, trying to make sense of something that was incomprehensible? The only thing he can see for certain is a bright beaming smile. Are you ready then? The voice is warm. It tingles along his skin like that moment before a fight, like a ship on the precipice of a mighty wave. It's been a while. The boy? The creature? The spirit? The thing? Reaches out to a branch that comes down in a long spiral. It lowers itself right into their waiting hands. There is a fruit on the end that can't be mistaken for anything else. A devil fruit. Roger breathes. The purple swirling patterns on the fruit match the tree branches that point each and every way in spring-like coils. Its rounded leaves follow the same spiral, looking like confetti as they dance and flutter around in the breeze. It was a devil fruit tree. They were in a grove of devil fruit trees. The one holding the fruit turns to Roger with a smile. The pirate can do nothing but laugh. I always wondered where they came from, the captain continues, chuckling. A human, huh? Undaunted by the devil fruit holder's widening smile, Roger steps forward. It's also been a while since one has been to Laugh Tale. So that's the island's true name, huh? Appropriate, considering that was the first thing to greet them here. Gold Roger, introducing himself with his crew behind him, he greets the entity warmly. And who would you be? The smile doesn't dim. It's too bright, too all-encompassing for a word so dull. But the stretch lessens, and for a split second, Roger might have been able to identify, hallucinate, eyes looking down at the fruit. The entity passes it between their hands, turning the purple leathery thing this way and that. You called this a devil fruit? The voice asks consideringly. Roger nods. The smile returns full force, innocent, almost sweet. Pure, perhaps not in the way humans would consider it, but as a complete embodiment of something. What that thing is, unfortunately and counterproductively, is too complex for Roger to name. With a complete lack of malice, they say. I guess that makes me the devil then. Roger doesn't hesitate to laugh. Well then, devil, it's nice to meet you. Shi. It's a strange sound, it echoes through the grove as if coming from the trees themselves, and Roger has no doubt it's the devil returning his laugh. I like you. Some would be horrified to receive the devil's endorsement. But Roger was a sort of devil himself, so his laughter just redoubles, the joy of two gleeful devils brightening the area. So this is your orchard then? Roger asks with keen curiosity. You grow the devil fruits? I am the devil fruits. The entity, the god, proclaims proudly, spinning around and gesturing to the trees. All I am grows here. I send it out there, so now I'm small. Shi. Roger doesn't think they are small. Their presence is too big, like the condensed form of Conqueror's Haki with a will no mortal man could hope to achieve. Yet, when you consider each devil fruit, every power out there, how one in the hands of a certain person could turn the world off its axis, how the power was so great, if someone dared to eat two their body would perish. All of that, held within one being? He can see how this would feel small to a god. What fruit is that? Roger peers at the harvest held protectively. Not as if cautious someone will take it, but like it is something precious, or rather, what part of you? A very special part. The grin melts into something caring, tender, before going blinding, and the devil turns on a dime, marching off through the grove. Roger looks back at his crew. Most look more than shell-shocked. He tilts his head at Rayleigh, asking his first mate a silent question. Rayleigh simply pinches his brow as if fighting off a headache and waves Roger on. Roger salutes sloppily, hurrying after the devil. He runs only for a few minutes before realizing he can't catch up. He changes to walking but doesn't fall any further behind. So he stays at a casual pace. If the god wants him to catch up, he will. Now that he's looking for it, while passing through the grove he spies the occasional fruit within the tree's branches. One tree has grown around the fruit like a cage, another has it half grown in the center of its trunk as it beats like a heart. Some fruits are the size of a berry. Roger never considered that devil fruits would have to grow before. No one had ever found a plant, they just seemingly popped out of the ocean from nowhere. But now, as he follows the devil to the beach of bones and watches them gently lower it into the water, he knows how they got there. The fruit fights valiantly against the current. The waves try to push it back but it bobs on, moved by a power all its own. Roger comes to stand next to the devil as they look wistfully after the fruit. They stand atop the bones, not sinking at all, unlike Roger. The pirate is a man who has many smiles. Those of happiness and pure joy. The rageful snarl that's cold and chilling as the smile turns bloody. The watery smile he gave his cabin boys, his sons, as he left them behind for this journey's last leg. That is the closest the mortal man can get to relating to a god. Why do you tear yourself apart? Roger asks. It's not reverent but rather the concerned ask of an old friend. The devil's smile turns small, watching as the fruit slips completely away from sight, bullying its way to the horizon. It's the only way part of me gets to be free, they say, and the loneliness of the tone, even humming with the powers of a being that has existed far longer than man, is heartbreakingly human. It has Roger's hackles rising. Are you a prisoner here? He demands with the same danger in his tone that has preceded nations falling. The laugh that greets him is loud and bright, echoing along the bones. The devil turns to him, the sun haloing his head making the smile look impossibly more radiant. Nah, my brother is just a worrywart. Your brother? Roger questions. The devil grins wider. Then, with a splash, they jump into the ocean. Roger peers down into the clear water. He was right, there are more bones down there. But the devil stops moving, freezing up completely as that smile remains on their face. The next moment, a big wave swells and they're washing up on shore. They don't cough or splutter, what would a god care of air, but rather giggle, lying amongst the bones. Oh, Roger thinks, looking upon the many skeletons, knowing for certain what each one used to be. Why devil fruit users can't swim? How many millennia did it take for the tides to bring their bodies, with powers soaked into their very bones, back here? The ocean is trying to return their brother home. It was said that if you ate a devil fruit, the ocean would hate you. Of course a god's scorn and love would look similar. The ocean must love you very much. Roger comes to sit by the devil, not sinking as far into the bones in this position. The devil still seemingly floats atop them, turning their head to smile at the pirate. Yeah, it's annoying. The god beams, reducing the Achilles heel that's drowned thousands, if not millions over time, to annoying. Roger cannot hope to understand or contextualize what these massive events, the sources of the world's myth and legend, mean in a god's mind. But his new friend doesn't seem mad at his brother, even if he clearly yearns for a life outside of Laugh Tale. So Roger will take his lead and not hold a grudge against the ocean's watery depths. You know, that's something I got wrong, Roger cackles. I've been referring to the seas as a mother for years. Can't they be? The devil sits up and tilts his head to the side, like a curious child. You called it your brother, Roger reminds, getting the god to tilt his head more. Isn't that how you refer to those other humans? Brother in arms? Always there, fighting together, against each other too, but always in the fun way? Well, usually. They pick up a bone and chuck it into the water, the smile taking on a more teasing lilt. And a mother is warm and caring, right? Protective? The ocean is too, also scary and strict. Usually someone can't be your brother and your mother, Roger tries to explain, and in all the things he expected to happen on Laugh Tale, he did not expect giving the devil the birds and the bees talk to be one. He hadn't even given his own sons that talk, outsourcing the problem to Rayleigh and Jumping Ship. Relationships are not about feeling? The god asks, and it's so simple the pirate pauses. I guess you're right. Roger guffaws, of course they are, and why would something as petty as gender matter to an all-powerful being anyway? Feelings, that was humanity's greatest strength anyway. Shishishishi, the devil giggles, the sound coming like a quiet choir at their backs, like wind flowing through the trees. I like your laugh, it feels like freedom. I'm the freest man in the world. Roger proclaims, and that seems to impress the god more than any show of power could manage. Do you want to be free? Mum, the devil nods enthusiastically. Their smile finally slips off for a pout of all things, a primordial being, pouting. But I can't get off the island since they stuck me here. I've thought of everything, it's been forever. Knowing they're a god, that's probably not an exaggeration. Roger chuckles and reaches for the body's shoulder. It jolts his arm, power thrumming up his bones, blood pushed back the wrong way. If the devil was at full power and not scattered in pieces across the world, Roger has no doubt the sheer rush would kill him. As is, he pushes through the instinct to let go to hold his friend as he promises. Then I will help you get off Laugh Tale. The devil tilts his head, not mocking or doubting as he curiously asks, how though? Every piece of me that can be spared is already a fruit, I'm all that's left. The devil crosses his arms, the pout coming full force. Don't think the ocean will let your ship leave if I'm on it. Roger hums, letting go to rub at his chin. The arm's sort of numb, like he's been sleeping on it for a while. He looks out at the trees. At the remnant of the devil. Can you turn the last part of yourself into a fruit? He gets a nod and Roger's grin grows. Great. Do it then and I'll eat you. The god's mouth opens. Closes. Turns into a tiny smirk, that grows into a soft smile, and becomes a bright grin that bursts with laughter. Yeah, that'll work. But I don't have much power left in me, you won't be able to do anything cool. That's okay, I've got one thing in mind if you think it's doable? The grin that meets him is a challenge. Roger will have to ask if it's alright they pick the devil fruits that are ready. It's the last the world is going to get for a while, now that the gardener is going on vacation. Rouge spends much of her time looking out over the ocean. From the house with its sunny windows to brief moments while hanging out the washing while her son plays on the beach. People suspected a lover on the sea and they weren't wrong. Roger had left for his last great adventure and for that Rouge didn't begrudge him. She had practically kicked his butt out of the house and threatened to burn the dock and cut him off from shore if he tried to return before fulfilling his dream. Yet, it wasn't her love for him that had her gazing out over the water, but a love for the ocean itself. She can admit privately that she misses the waves, the rush of adventure they brought her once. However, she had run out of people to share it with. The ocean that she loved so much had taken her crew as well. Sometimes, that love was a soul-tearing hate. She hated the waters for so long that she didn't doubt herself at all when she committed to living on land, raising her son. Yet, it was telling that she never destroyed her dear old skiff. That she keeps it well tended, tucked in a little cave in the cove where she takes Ace to play. Her son loves the sea. With his parents, how could he not? Taking the 3-year-old out on the skiff to sail laps around the island is one of her greatest joys. His laughter as he squints against the sea foam make her glad for her decision not to destroy it. Mama! Mama! Ace calls from the rocky outcropping he is climbing. His chubby little arm pointing towards the sea. Dad's coming. Mum, Rouge hums, trying to disguise her laugh. Ace thought every boat, piece of driftwood, and shadow was his father returning home. It had only gotten worse since the newspapers came out proclaiming Roger as the Pirate King. It meant he had made it to Raftel, had made it back. He was coming back here, she knew he was. But Rouge knew his prognosis when he left. If it was still true, they had so little time. Mama! Ace huffs, stomping his foot. The little puddles gathered on the rocks splashing. Come look! I'm coming, Rouge reassures, and this time she does laugh, climbing up the rocks to her little Spitfire. Ace's bucket of little treasures has been discarded. She ducks down to pick it up, scooping the bits of seaweed and shells back in place. Mama! Not looking. Ace scowls, tugging on her dress. She pinches his cheek, right over his freckles, making the scowl deepen. I'm sorry, Spitfire, now we're dash, she cuts off, spotting in the distance what her son had. A small dinghy. Red coat. Wide smile. Roger. She breathes, scooping her son up, and they both wave. The man is visible even if he is still far off, waving both hands with his whole body. The movement almost has the dinghy capsizing and he scrambles not to fall off. Rouge laughs, tittering and soft at her big lovable oaf. She carries Ace down to the beach. The boy wiggles around to get to the sand. She lets him go and he sprints off across it, sand spraying with each footstep. Rouge is not sure he remembers his father properly, he was all but one when the man left for his final voyage. She's also not sure how much of what he knows is from stories, heard from her and others and made legend in his young mind. How much from the scarce den calls they managed. It had been almost a year since they lost contact as the crew entered the new world, only knowing how they were doing from newspapers and wanted posters. But for a selfish moment as Roger's dinghy reaches the shallows, Rouge doesn't worry about her son's reaction. She walks out into the waves. They lap at her like a greeting, pulling her out to her heart. Roger scrambles off the dinghy as he sees her approach. Boots and full coat still on. Although she isn't any better, her beach dress gets soaked through. As she runs through the waves. Rouge! Roger! The two collide. She feels her love lift and spin her, her feet dancing along the top of the water, sending sea spray in a circle around them. Their laughter rings across the water, echoes back and forth on the walls of the cove. Roger holds her up and there's a quick peck to her lips, but neither can look away from the other's face for too long. She leans her forehead against his, soaking in his bright eyes. Welcome home, Pirate King. She runs her hands through his hair. It's coarse and straw-like, damaged from the salt of years, a lifetime really, at sea. Does that make you my pirate queen? He teases back. Rouge huffs, pecking at his lips herself before pulling back. I'd sooner earn that title myself, thank you. The response, predictably, earns her laughter. The sound seeps into her bones like a limb she's been missing. It peters off all too quickly as Roger looks towards the shore. For a man who has seen all the world has to offer, he has never looked more odd. Ace, Roger takes a step forward and Rouge doesn't mind his distraction in the least. Ace is looking at them, fidgeting where the tides just start to lap at his feet. Roger shuffles forward, through the waves as Rouge follows behind. Ace looks up and up at his father until the man is right in front of him. Then the king of the pirates drops to his knees, water splashing up and wet sand coats his pants. Ace. He repeats like a prayer, and her son, contrary to his excitement earlier, scowls and crosses his arms. You left. The boy accuses in his choppy toddler speak. He'd probably say a lot more if he had the vocabulary and ability to. Could probably understand a lot better what about that makes him upset. What stops him from hugging the father he's waited every day for? I know. Roger hangs his head. He doesn't apologize. They know he's not sorry for the adventure he had. He doesn't promise not to leave. He will, even Ace knows they only have so much time. But I love you, the man says, and that's really all that matters. I loved you every day I was gone and I'll love you every day I'm still here, and then every day after that for whatever comes next. Ace frowns and his lip wobbles. Expression all scrunched up and pained, trying to understand all the big feelings. He looks at Rouge over Roger's shoulder. She gives her son a sad smile. It's not fair. He was born to two incredibly selfish people who knew their lives, their dreams, were not suited for children. But they wanted this little boy so bad they had him anyway. Okay, Ace nods slowly. Promise no stopping? I promise. Roger grins. Whether it's the words or the smile that's charmed everyone he's met, one Ace has never properly seen before and is now being faced with the widest yet. Their son beams back and there's so much of Roger in that smile. He launches himself at his dad, little arms not even making it around his big body. But that doesn't matter because Roger's hug is all-encompassing. He rubs his little boy's back the same way he did when his body was racked with sobs as a baby, like how it is now. Rouge folds herself down next to them, hugging her boys, holding onto them as the tide tries to drag them back out. Roger's hers now, the ocean had its time blessed by him. Ace will have his time with it one day as well. But for now, they're both here and they're both hers. My love, Rouge reaches for his face. Her thumb wiping away the tears that trail into his smile. It only grows wider as he leans into her palm. Your boat is floating away. Roger looks behind him to the little dinghy getting taken out by the tide. Damn it. He pulls away with a splash of seawater, running out to go retrieve it. Ace giggles at his flailing as does Rouge. That teasing little chuckle is all hers. He reaches the point where she knows the sandy bank drops, that she's taught Ace to judge and avoid it. Roger suddenly drops down and Rouge only chuckles for a moment before realizing he's flailing, not swimming, not treading water, flailing. Roger? She calls out in concern. The man splutters and goes under with a small wave. Ace, stay here. She makes sure the toddler stays put before running, then swimming out to Roger. He's sinking down, tides pulling at his clothes, trying to drag him out. She dives down and hefts him up. The two break from the water with much coughing on the Pirate King's part. She looks at him incredulously, treading water for the both of them while the man who could once swim between islands does nothing to help. Roger grimaces in that sheepish way he gets on occasion, when shame and self-awareness make it through his thick, bull-headed skull. So, funny story? You made a deal with the devil. Rouge says, arms crossed, glaring at Roger on the other side of the dining table. For me to have its child. Technically, the child will be the devil. Roger corrects, bathed in the golden light of evening, he looks sheepish but not enough. So you want me to give birth to the devil? He'd still be our son, Roger reassures, gesturing to their other son who had grown bored of this debate some time ago and was now occupying himself on the floor with some toys. Just with a bit of devil thrown in there. So he would know he's the devil? Her glare pierces the man as he gives a shrugging gesture. Roger. I don't know? We didn't really work out any of the details. Roger rubs the back of his head, but then he smiles and his eyes light up. But they were a good person, I could tell. You'd love them, Rouge. Don't Rouge me right now. She hisses, despite the fact that if Roger deems somebody a good person, they probably are. Besides, from his story it doesn't sound like the god knew what being the devil truly meant to humans. Did names matter to a being like that? Did they choose their own names or did they just take on whatever humanity assigned them? What happens if we don't follow through on this deal? Rouge asks, sitting back in her chair. I'm sure we can avoid it. Roger shrugs, uncaring of potentially invoking a god's wrath, because really, how could it stand up to Rouge's anger? It just means you won't get any of this sweet love and dash. Rouge reaches over and smacks him upside the head. With hockey. Roger groans and rubs the back of his head where the spot is smarting. Rouge tunes out his whining and pouting. She drums her fingers on the table and looks out the window. The sun is returning to the horizon, bathing all of Batarilla in golden light. It's gorgeous as it reflects on the ocean. Travelers of all sorts have hailed the seas as the ultimate freedom. It had been hers too, her joy, her life. It had been her friends' graves. One of them was a devil fruit user. They sank quicker and deeper than anyone else. Were their bones being washed towards that island now? All this time, the ocean was hailed as a champion of freedom while keeping a prisoner. It was just the sort of dichotomy the seas were known for. Calm and cruel. Life-giving and taking. Loving and spiteful. Free and chained. Ace baby? She calls while Roger is still nursing his wound. Her Spitfire looks up and Rouge asks. Do you want a little brother? Ace's face scrunches up at the question, the way it does when she asks if he wants to play outside more or come in and read a bedtime story, real tales from her and Roger's adventures, most of the time. Will it be cool? The question gets a full belly laugh out of Roger and a small chuckle from Rouge. Yes, they'll probably be very cool. She can't imagine a world where a devil child doesn't take them by storm. A god walking among mortals. Okay then, Ace shrugs, going back to his play. Well, if we've got his permission, Roger cracks his knuckles, looking pointedly towards the bedroom. We should probably get started. Rouge's returning smile is saccharine sweet as her hand coats itself in black. Their time together, as it always is with his family, is too short. Roger is aware that it is entirely his fault. He's the one that keeps leaving them. Rouge always, the love of his life, left behind over and over again either on different ships or different islands. Ace, only twice now, but ultimately the time Roger has spent in his life will be little over a year, too short, much too short. Then his cabin boys, his sons, Buggy and Shanks, abandoned. Should he have taken them with him to Rouge? Was it time to start their own stories? Or was it too early? Then there was his youngest, an eldritch horror he had stolen from the ocean itself. They had decided to name him Luffy. He was still just a bump. The only things he knew, would ever know were thus: Luffy would be a god, the ocean would always be trying to get him back, Rouge had the biggest cravings for smoked ham because of him. Yes, Roger knew he was selfish because his own desires always trumped his want to stay with them. He wanted the ocean more than he wanted Rouge. He wanted a last adventure more than he wanted to raise Ace. He wanted to avoid his older sons bringing attention to Rouge and his youngest, so he left them. He wanted a flashy exit more than he wanted to see if he could last until Luffy's birth. That one was probably for the best. If Luffy came out looking like that ever-shifting uncanny being from Laugh Tale, Rouge would have killed Roger anyway. He's a selfish father, and a selfish friend. He disbanded his crew because he wanted this last year with Rouge and his son. None of them knew what he was planning, though Rayleigh might have had his suspicions. That was good, he didn't want any of them seeing his death after they fought so hard to keep each other alive. But he could feel his older sons in the crowd and make sure to smile wider as he made his march up. He hadn't told any of his old allies and friends what he was planning. The only one who knew was Garp, and only because the man was marching him to death row. Roger had turned himself over to the man, selfishly ignoring the way the Marine's face crumpled as he had no choice but to put on those cuffs. He had selfishly used that guilt to make Garp promise to protect his sons. Had turned himself over in the first place because he knew the man wouldn't gloat over his victory of taking down the Pirate King. He was selfishly about to make his old friend execute him because he wanted the man that did it to know Roger, to not hate him. Roger knelt on that platform. He was selfish, more so because he didn't regret a single action. He'd do it all again, and if it weren't for the disease he'd still be out there following his dreams. Because that's what the Pirate King does. That's what a free man does. Pirate King, tell us where you've hidden your treasure. His last words should probably be a declaration of love to his family. To the sons in the crowd about to watch him die. To Rouge looking after their toddler, about to give birth to another one of their children. Roger grins. No, his last words are going to be for himself. For the era he is about to inspire. And maybe he selfishly hopes it will inspire his family too. Batarilla, her home island, the place where her precious son was born, is burning. The screams of the island's mothers echo all the way to the far side. Rouge runs in the opposite direction, leaving the wailing mothers to a fate meant for her. She has Ace on her back and Luffy in her belly. It makes each step a challenge as she runs as fast as she can down the path to their little cove. Her skimmer is there and it's been packed with provisions since the day she found out she was having Ace. Mama? Ace's voice is small and scared, still tired after she had yanked him out of bed at the first sign of Marines. It's all right, Spitfire, we're going to go for a ride. She reassures, taking a genuine breath of relief as she notices there's no Marines ships this side of the island yet. They always leave gaps and she's good at finding them. The skiff helps with that. She pulls the tarp off her old friend, bundling it up and stuffing it in a storage container as she starts pushing it out towards the water. Ace, with his kind heart, jumps down to help. She picks him up when they reach the water and takes the skiff as far out as she can. It's a struggle climbing onto the ship with a swollen belly, but she manages, panting through the ill-timed nausea as a little hand pats her back. It's okay, baby, I'm Dash. The words freeze in her throat. Around the cape, a blue and white ship is turning. Ace, I need you to go into the cabin below. Don't come out for anything. Ma Dash. Now, she says firmly, lifting up the hatch. The cabin is so small it's basically a coffin. She desperately hopes it won't become a real one. Ace hiccups, a sob hitching as she puts him in and closes the hatch back down. The Marine ship is close. Far too close. She tugs on the sails and trusts in the wind. She's smaller and more maneuverable, but she won't be faster, yet she knows these waters. There is a current further out that will take her quickly away. If she can reach it in time, they can disappear into the night. Rouge doesn't know if the Marines spot her as she books it towards the current. The winds are in her favor, which means they're in the Marines' favor too, and their sails are a hell of a lot bigger. Rouge tugs on the ropes, teeth bared against the biting spray. She feels butterfly kicks on her belly and places a hand over it. Of course you like this, she chuckles at the baby's excitement. Just like your parents after all. Then she hears the telltale whirl of a cannonball. Looking up, she spots it in the sky, estimates its trajectory and tugs hard at the rudder and ropes. They veer to the left as the cannonball hits just right of them. The resulting wave rocks the skiff and Rouge can hear Ace's yelp below. "It's all right, sweetie." Rouge calls over the roar of the wind and the boom of another cannonball. This one has her riding up so she can keep heading straight for that current. It hits the water just behind him, Rouge angling them so the waves will give them a boost. The Marines are gaining on them. Rouge can hear the orders being shouted over the water. She pulls on the ropes, making sure they're not directly in front of the ship so they won't be pulled under, while making sure they're not lined up right for any cannon fire. The Marines realize this too quickly and get their snipers deployed. Rouge curses. She can't afford to zigzag, she needs every bit of speed they can get. So she ducks low, covering her belly as much as she can and lets armament hockey cover her back. She hopes there are no commanding officers who know hockey. Why would there be? They came here expecting civilians, not Hibiscus Rouge. They came here expecting a slaughter. The Marine vessel is getting too close. The current is still far off, she'll be crushed before she gets there. In an utterly reckless maneuver Roger would be proud of, she pulls to the side, out of the ship's path and snaps her sails shut. Their momentum quickly falls off while the Marine ship hurtles on, close enough for her to reach out and run her hand along the hull. The cannons on the sides come in line with her and Rouge laughs hysterically as she's close enough to see the lights of their linstocks. She hears the cannons fire, feels the splash of them and her boat rocks dangerously, knocking against the warship's hull. Ace cries out down below but Rouge doesn't have time to reassure him. She can hear the scrambling as they reload. Others shout orders that she's too close, to get the rifles instead. Rouge releases the sail, pulls the ropes so they're angled away from the ship and jets off. There's a cry, a hail of bullets as she quickly pulls away. Some hit but they ping off her hockey harmlessly. She drops the hockey as soon as she's out of range. Unfortunately, that means it puts her once more in the path of cannons. Rouge dodges between the splash of cannon fire, heading off to the side in the opposite direction of the current. The winds are not as strong. She's slower than before, but she's maneuverable. The Marine ship has a harder time turning to chase after her and ends up behind her once again. Rouge knows she's going to have to pass by the side again to get back on track. She angles wide towards the island, making sure the warship is still straight on before quickly jerking at the ropes to spin them around. They turn on a dime back towards the ship and what Rouge would give to see the officers' faces right now. The Marine ship creaks and struggles to turn. It moves in her direction, towards the island. Good. She's high on the wind whipping at her face. The salty spray it brings with it. She laughs, howling her joy into the night. She can't hear anything over the blood pumping in her ears and that's a mistake. She misses the sound of cannon fire as she passes by the side of the ship. One cannonball hits too close. She dodges it, right into the path of a second one. It's headed right for them, right for her. It's an impossibly lucky shot and it would have missed completely had she not, she was a fool, turned into it. It's instinct that Rouge spins and hunches over her belly. A thin layer of armament hockey covers her back but the majority is focused around her child. If she was clever, if she wasn't acting on barest desperate impulse, she would have tried something else but that sort of clarity only comes when her back is burning and she's screaming into the night. Mama! Ace thumps against the hatch. Rouge leans her weight into it, biting back the pain until her lips are bloody. I'm okay baby, stay in there. Her voice wobbles. The pain at her back is blacking out the edges of her vision. That won't do, her boys need her. Rouge grits her teeth, winds the rope around her wrists and JRKs the sail tight. They shoot off, past the warship, out of range. The Marines panic and try to turn faster, only to be met with a cacophony of wood tearing up against rock. The big ship runs right into the rocky outcropping hidden under the waves that Rouge's skimmer passes by without worry. It sounds nasty but she doesn't look back to check. It's a clear shot to the current now and she has her sail angled to catch the wind just right, her way lit by the fires spouting up across her home island. Rouge feels the shift in the water, the tug of the boat's hull through the current as it grabs them. It's a struggle to get out of this rip unless you really try, especially on such a small boat. She had panicked the first time it happened and had been dragged far out to sea. She had followed it on the day she set out to become a pirate, laughing as the wind behind her and the current beneath her shot her forward into new beginnings. Now she ties up the sail securely and lifts the rudder. Her back is searing with pain and her shoulders scream when they bunch and stretch while lifting the hatch to the cabin. Her little Spitfire had tears running down his face and Rouge smiles gently. Hey AC, I told you we'd be alright, she soothes, thanking the knight for hiding her bloody charred back from the boy. She does her part as she hides her grimace while lowering herself onto the narrow bed. I've got you. Ace's breath hitches as he burrows into her chest. With his face covered, she allows the wince as she reaches up to close the hatch. The skin along her shoulder blade is definitely split and she sks in a pained breath, glad that Ace's sobbing is covering it. She settles down, holding her son close and running a hand through his hair. Her other hand goes to her belly, tracing over it, breathing a sigh of relief when she feels a kick. Mama's got you boys. It was a sunny day, at least. For that moment. Rouge was on an island in the Grand Line that was known to switch between weather at the drop of a hat. The locals adjusted as well as they could, they grew all kinds of plants from different climates, so the island had a vast array of produce should a crop or two fail. Regardless, she had lucked out and was enjoying mangoes on the pier. The rest of her crew were making merry with the locals. From the sounds of it, a full-on festival was going to start at any moment, but that was likely due to the island's other visitors. Rouge would join once she was no longer massacring a pile of fruit, sweet juice running down her face and absolutely destroying her sundress. You look radiant as always, thick black hair comes over her vision. Rouge follows her reflexes and punches. The man falls back with a cry, a hand clutched over his bleeding nose. But there was nothing short of stars in his eyes when he looked at her. And the meanest right hook. Roger. It's a surprise, realization, and admonishment all in one. She wipes her mouth off with the back of her hand. It comes away sticky. She knows there's probably still mango juice and pulp lining her chin and running down her neck, and certainly evidence left behind on what should be a white dress. You should know better than to sneak up on me by now, she scowls, because it was certainly intentional. You always get distracted when you eat, Roger's grinning as he wipes the blood away from his swollen nose. More dribbles down almost immediately and he doesn't bother to stem it, too busy staring at her with a dopey grin. Which is ridiculous. She looks ridiculous. Plus she can feel rivulets of mango juice running down her arms, mixing with the blood on her knuckles. Sees, we both look a mess, Rouge chuckles, deciding it and wiping her hands off on her dress. It's not like it didn't get enough stains in battle. You look perfect. Compliments roll off Roger's tongue like waves roll onto shore. Rouge would call him a sweet talker if she didn't know this man has meant every word he's ever said. Has never regretted a single action, at least until now as he reaches for one of her mangoes, pausing only when Rouge growls lowly in her throat. Try it, the man has the decency to look properly chastised, and just a little wary. He knew as well as anyone not to get between AD and their food, plus Rouge hadn't gotten to have mango in so long. I'll get my own? An extra for me, Rouge flips her hair over her shoulder, mango juice definitely matting it in parts. As an apology for even considering it. Nope. Roger replies cheerfully, I've got something even better. Rouge crosses her arm and looks unimpressed down at the ridiculous man, scrambling around and checking his pockets while still sitting down where the punch had thrown him. His straw hat almost blows off as the winds pick up, a sign the weather is about to change again. She reaches out and lightly presses down on the brim to make sure it stays in place. Roger's smile in return is absolutely dazzling, even with the blood smeared over his top lip. Tada! The man proudly presents a hibiscus flower, the same color as the ribbon on his hat. We found this special variety a few islands ago. The locals said it will never wilt, never lose its color and never die. It's a forever bloom just like my love for you. Rouge blinks down at the small flower cupped in two big hands like the most precious treasure. When was the last time they had seen each other? Months? How long had this fool been holding it in his pocket waiting to see her again? How many battles had it weathered, coming out without a scratch or bruised petal? There's a shift from behind him and Rouge looks up to see Rayleigh. Roger's first mate is watching them with exhausted resignation. That is answer enough. Thank you, Rouge takes the flower, startling slightly at its texture, before her smile grows impossibly wide. She leans forward planting a soft kiss on Roger's bruised nose, the skin hot from the rush of blood. I love it. I hoped so. Roger beams, pushing himself up and almost headbutting Rouge in his haste. Now come on. There's a party. It certainly looks like he is right. Even as the wind pick up and the clouds swirl gray overhead, the town is lively, setting up bright umbrellas at the first drops of rain and continuing on with their joy. Roger runs off into the crowd with a big smile, waving back at them as people get pulled into his orbit. Rouge waves back, hibiscus held gently in one hand. She can't seem to wipe the smile off her face. Not when Ray comes to stand by her side, also waving at his captain, with a fond smile at his antics. You didn't tell him it was plastic, did you? Rouge asks lightly, not letting her expression slip an inch. Honestly, it reached a point we didn't know how to. Rayleigh's smile is pained as Roger's boisterous laugh starts echoing through the town, down the pier and across the water. By the seas, she loves this man. Rouge lays on her side, idly playing with her son's hair as he sleeps. She knew she was going to die. They had made it out to a small unpopulated island. She couldn't risk going to one with a hospital. The Marines were covering the South Blue, her escape basically a confirmation of their greatest fears. Someone would turn her over. She'd bet her old bounty posters are getting redistributed or a new one is in the works. It'll probably be higher than her own, which is a sting to her pride. If she had more time, she'd do something worthy of that price. Yet she didn't. Her back burned. Every breath was agony. Ace had seen it once and his wailing lasted hours and only petered out when he cried himself to sleep. She resolved not to let him see it again for as long as she lived, which wouldn't be much longer now. She traced her son's freckles. Would Luffy have them too? She could imagine it would be adorable, Ace poking at his little brother's cheeks the same way he did to her freckles. The same way she was doing to him now. It was a nice thought, but it wouldn't happen. She was going to die before that. As he runs her hand over her belly, feeling the feather-like kicks. Her son was usually far more feisty. She hoped her hockey protected him even if it didn't matter. She was going to die before he was born. All of her thoughts kept circling back to that. Her death. Her son's. If she didn't die before giving birth, she would during or after. Where would that leave Ace? With the dead body of his mother and a baby he was unable to feed. Would Luffy die in his arms? Would Ace go looking for help? Would the Marines shoot down her baby boys at first sight? Of course they would. And she wouldn't be there to stop them. Because she was going to die here. From a lucky shot. A measly cannonball to the back. F that. She gives a peck to Ace's forehead, biting down her cries as she struggles to sit up. Her belly weighs her down and pain laces through her back. She feels the weak skin crack and tear, oozing anew. Bones in her shoulder that had been shattered are grinding together, stabbing into her flesh. She grits her teeth against the scream and stands. She exits the little cave nook they had found with staggering steps. She passes the skiff, palm fronds haphazardly spread over it, keeping their location hidden from any passing scouts. They're close to the beach. Rouge hadn't managed to walk much further as she fought against her blackout. Her steps falter at the icy touch of the waves lapping at her feet. She presses forward into the surf until she's up to her waist in it. The salt hitting the wounds on her lower back presses a scream out of her that she turns on the ocean. "Listen here, you fucker. I'm carrying your brother, son, whatever, yours," she screams out into the night, her desperation and pain carrying across the inky black water. "And if this keeps up, I'm going to die. So use your almighty power and do something." The water roils. Rouge braces herself, digging her feet into the sand as a wave washes over her head. The salt creeps into the cracks of her wound, blood and brine intermingling. The sting is like getting cannon blasted all over again. She can't stop the scream, choking water into her lungs. The wave crests and passes. She hacks up the water, vomit going with it, getting mixed into the sea. The wind chills her and the water rushing out to make another wave pulls at her already tattered dress. She can see the swell start to build again. Her arms tremble and her vision gets spotty. She pulls on her consciousness like she would the ropes of her skimmer, jerking the sails to stay up. "Not yet. If I die, he dies with me, you hear?" Rouge shrieks, at the approaching crest of a wave. There's no getting him back. The wave falls short, breaking just in front of her. Salt water laps up her back like tearing knives, but she doesn't go under. The ocean is only merciful when it chooses. Do you understand death? You should. You took my crew from me. Tears are streaming down her face, the salt of them and of the ocean mixing together. The ocean has taken so many of her tears. So now you're going to give me something back and help save my son. She hears the rush of water as it's pulled out again. Can see the swell of the next wave, bigger than all the rest. Her footing in the sand is already unsteady. This one is definitely going to wash her away. At least Ace won't have to see her body. The wave crashes into her, picking her clean off her feet and spinning Rouge around in its wake. It's dizzying, no way to know up from down in the dark and the sea foam. Her back hits something solid and she's dragged along it, the rough surface tearing off whatever skin was left on her back. Her howl is that of a beast, the sound choked up and drowned in the ocean. The water washes away and her scream reaches the air of the night. Rivulets trail down her body as the sand beneath her gets bloodied. Rouge pants, fighting back the darkness from her mind. She sees lights that could be the stars or could be the end. Her baby kicks. She grits her teeth and chooses stars. Rouge can feel the waves gently lapping at her feet like it's a harmless calm day. She groans, wondering if she can make it back to her son for a final goodbye. Or take a knife to her belly on the off chance she can cut Luffy out of herself and have him survive. Would Ace hate her for that? Hate his brother? She can't let that happen, even if she has to drag herself there. Rouge will make sure her son's heart is not filled with hate before she leaves. She turns to look towards the cave where her son is, but something blocks her vision. It shines a light blue under the moonlight. Spikes twist off it like stationary flames, tipped with gold. Rouge reaches out, arm trembling. She hefts it up. It's a trial. Her body is weak and shaking. Devil fruit, huh? Rouge mutters. Sea water laps at her feet and she pulls them away. Sure, why not? She takes a bite with no idea what it does, but it's her only option. The taste is rancid on her tongue, and as she remembers Roger said the fruit was literally part of the devil. She only manages to take one bite before her arm gives out and the deceptively beautiful fruit falls to the side. Rouge forces the bite down, feeling the warmth spreading from her stomach. It's like a rush of energy, like a hit of adrenaline paired with the warmth of a hearth. The second fire comes to mind. Light springs up around her. She feels a gentle heat settle across her back, up her arms as it licks at her wounds. With more strength than before, she raises her arm, staring enamored at the light blue flames flickering up towards her wrist. It's as if all the pain lifts off her and she takes her first easy breath since the cannonball. When Rouge pushes herself to sit up, her bones don't grind, they sit properly in a way that feels unnatural now. Her shoulders don't scream and her skin doesn't tear as she reaches around to run her hand over her back. Smooth skin greets her fingertips. The last licks of flame washing the wound away. Huh? Rouge sits up properly and looks out to the ocean, the waves following their normal tide again. She holds out her arm, picturing the warmth of the hearth fire back home. The one she rocked Ace to sleep in front of. Her arm bursts into blue flames, losing its form but following her movements as she shifts her arm back and forth. There's more to it. She instinctively knows if she lets the fire take completely over her body something will change. She'll change. She'll be free like never before and not even the ocean would be able to tie her down. I guess that'll do. She tells the water begrudgingly. Then her whole body seizes in a pain that even a devil fruit can't help. It rolls off her in waves and Rouge starts laughing through it. She places her hands over her belly and feels Luffy's lively kicks. You've got a knack for timing, kiddo. She laughs and hopes that the sound carries across the sea to Roger. The Whitebeard pirates are set up on a new world island, another party stretching well into the night. It's meant to be a morning type, not a jovial one, but people still laugh and make merry, which is what the man of honor would have wanted. They've been throwing a lot of these recently, each time an old ally approaches. They talk of old stories and toast to a new era in the same breath. Marco is drinking with his brothers, kicking up the surf into each other's drinks while Pops watches on. He doesn't admonish them for wasting alcohol because he knows it will get drunk regardless. Marco backs up trying to protect his drink from Thatch's attack when his ankles hit something hard and he topples over. His drink does spill into the ocean then, the mug swept quickly away by the tide. Shut up you are, he grumbles, picking himself up, soggy clothes and all, as his brothers laugh. With a scowl, he reaches for whatever had tripped him up, finding a box half buried in the sand. Laughter instantly turns to curiosity. Others gather around the surf to egg Marco into opening it. He rolls his eyes and doesn't bother with a crowbar, simply crushing the box with hockey. What falls into his hands isn't treasure but something far more valuable. Oh, a devil fruit. Thatch crows, getting a drunken cheer as Marco holds it up. You gotta eat it now. Marco looks up at Pops, the man keenly paying attention to the new commotion his sons are making. Pops simply smiles down at him, Marco still sitting in the shallow water. You found it, the man waves off. It's your choice what to do with it. Marco considers the fruit, holding it up to study its light blue, flame-like design. Thatch is egging him on, more curious to see whatever ability it is than considering long-term effects. Marco shrugs, it's not like they'd leave him to drown if he fell in the water. Another cheer goes up as he leans forward to take a bite, then a wave slams into his side. His jaws close around nothing and it's only when the wave has receded and he's rubbing the salty sting out of his eyes does Marco realize his hands are empty. He stares down at them dumbstruck, slowly looking out at the ocean but there's no sign of the little blue fruit among the small waves. Whitebeard's raucous laughter shocks his sons out of their stupor. All of them turning as one to look at the man, his laugh bellowing across the beach. Looks like the ocean had other plans, he says like it's a comfort, like Marco didn't just get personally screwed over by the seas. Unbelievable you are, he mutters, as his brothers join in with their Pop's laughter. Luffy is perfectly precious in every way. He smiles like the sun in all his gummy glory. He doesn't have their freckles but Ace is enamored by his cheeks anyway, poking them as he feeds and calling them soft. Her little Spitfire was a trooper while she was giving labor, going to get fresh water and blankets when she asked, sticking by her side and holding her hand tight as she cried out at the bigger contractions. He had trembled and asked if she was okay when she cut the umbilical cord, clutching tight to Luffy, all red and pruny. The baby didn't scream when entering the world but rather laughed, and all of Rouge's worries about Ace ever hating his brother washed away at the look of wonder her boy gave. Now she was nursing Luffy and Ace hadn't looked away from the baby for more than a second since he was born. Eyes always trailing Luffy even as he wrapped clean blankets around Rouge. Luffy went after her milk with the gusto of someone with the D name. Rouge chuckled as she switched him to the other BRST. A lick of blue flames chased away the chafing he had left on her other NPL. Her poor melons were going to thank that devil fruit. Her whole body was, really. There was no lingering pain left over from labor, simply an ache and exhaustion. Any damage had already been repaired. Rouge didn't know if she would have survived without it. There were a lot of blood-soaked blankets everywhere. Luffy still had some on him, there was blood all up Ace's arms, and Rouge knew her legs would be coated in it. But that was a problem to clean up later. For now, she pulled her bloodied boys close and hugged them tightly. They had made it. They had outstubborn death itself. Rouge knew they couldn't stay on the island for long. Their food was never going to last with 2 Ds, let alone 3, especially not with Rouge trying to recover energy from childbirth and her new devil fruit power. Regardless of the food problem, she knew Marines were swarming the South Blue looking for her. It was only a matter of time before they decided to tear up every unoccupied island and got lucky. So, at only a few days old, Luffy was setting sail. "I need you to look after your brother down below, all right?" Rouge ruffles Ace's hair as she makes a nest out of all their salvageable blankets. "You hold on to him tight and make sure he's not being rocked around too much." "Scary again?" Ace asks with big wet eyes, clutching his brother close as Rouge primps the blankets around them. "Not if I can help it. We're going to try to stay hidden, K? K." Ace sniffles, snuggling into Luffy as she closes the hatch. It's too dark in there for them. Rouge desperately hopes she's not traumatizing her son about small dark places, but she'd rather him be down below out of sight. She has no idea what intel the world government has on her and her family. Has anyone on their home island given them away? Was anybody even left to do so? Rouge couldn't tell. Right now, it was better to keep her sons out of sight and get the hell out of the sea. Going to the East Blue, her heart's home, would be the stupid thing to do. So no one would suspect Hibiscus Rouge to do it. Besides, it was also Garp's home sea and she knew he had made Roger a promise. Rouge had no intention of handing her sons over to the Marine, but he would probably do what he could to protect them in the East Blue. Or at least keep reports of them being there on the down low. Rouge kept her guard up. She didn't let her movements be more than rumors. Hopefully people would piece together that she was going to Reverse Mountain, but not until she actually reached there. Approaching the red line and seeing no Marine ships told her at least part of that had worked. The world government should have had Marines stationed here regardless. Apparently no one thought a PRGNNT woman or new mother would risk it. They were laughably wrong. She brings out her sons, who she had kept hidden away in the hatch, as they approached. Rouge places Luffy in a basket that used to keep food and passes it to Ace. She makes sure his arms are wrapped around the skiff's mast so his brother and himself would be secure. Ideally they would have ropes but there would be no time to untie them. "I need you to hold on real tight, okay baby?" Rouge closes up the basket, Luffy whining from inside it when he wasn't able to see it. "It's going to be super rocky and fast so don't let go until I tell you to." Ace nods, eyes steely, already with a white-knuckled grip on the basket. She's going to end up giving him the most intense protective streak. Well, he was Roger's son so that was probably going to happen regardless. "All right, sweetie." Rouge sits back, taking the rudder as she feels the pull of the current intensify. "Try to have some fun, Mama's got you." The sail is pulled up and as they're brought quickly towards Reverse Mountain she sees the ship wreckage piled up on either side. She holds the rudder steady as they pick up speed. Ace is looking in wide-eyed wonder as the current starts to tilt up, taking them up the mountain. Rouge keeps her grip, and has one hand on Ace's back, feeling his thundering heart. Yet both mother and son have manic grins in place as the boat is rocked violently to and fro. Rouge has gone up this path before, but never with a boat so small. She hears the crack of wood over the roaring current as they're shot up the side of the mountain. She feels no resistance when she presses against the rudder and so lets it go completely, letting the river take them where it wants. She folds herself over her boys, one hand on Ace to steady him while the other takes hold of the mast. Her poor skiff gets battered by the water, veering towards the side as they get towards the top. "All right Ace, get ready to do what I said." Rouge shouts over the rush of wind and water. She feels her son's shoulders bunch, leaning into her as they reach the top. The spray of water, the resounding crash has them flying through the air. With it is a light fluttering feeling deep in the stomach, the pure rush of utter freedom before it starts to come down. "Now Ace." She shouts, jumping away. Her son, her brave little Spitfire, listens and lets go of the mast, other hand still on the basket as he's tossed up in the air. The skiff goes down without them and Rouge hears the splintering of wood. She gives a mournful goodbye to her precious boat before pulling on that fire inside of herself. She coaxes it to spread across her arms, her body, and lets it take her completely. She's completely warm and aware of the world in a way she's never been before. Her awareness singles in on one point, her son's scream as he falls towards the rush of oceans meeting. Rouge dives down. Her body leaves blue sparks in her wake. It's instinct when she reaches out with talons, and care that makes sure they don't rip through skin, as one closes around Ace and the other the basket. Ace's legs splash through the spray of the four seas colliding as Rouge pulls up. They go up and away, towards the east. As they fly from the rush of water, Rouge hears the cackling cheer from her son. She crows with it, a phoenix cry among the clouds, a freedom not even the ocean can afford. They land, or rather crash, in Logetown. Rouge splays out on the beach, panting and promising herself that at the first sign of food she's giving no care to courtesy. She will feast. Ace is starfished next to her, looking up at the sky with wide eyes. "What did you think of your first time up Reverse Mountain, kiddo?" Rouge prods, getting those starstruck eyes to turn to her. "That was amazing." Ace jumps up and Rouge laughs heartily as he starts making big gestures and jumping around. "We were all whoosh. Then bang. The fall, and then you. Yeah," Rouge breathes, a lick of blue flame goes with her exhale, up to the sky. "We've got to do that again, but food first. Are you hungry, baby?" "I'm not the baby anymore," Ace pouts, crossing his arms. "Luffy is." "Luffy, don't repeat that." Rouge looks around the beach for where she placed his basket. Too close to the water apparently, as there's a wet patch in the sand reaching up higher than anywhere else and a small wave is slowly dragging the basket out. "Oh no you don't." Rouge scrambles up, rushing into the ankle-deep water. Lethargy comes over her, piling on top of her exhaustion already, but she pushes through and scoops up the basket. "You're not getting my son, you hear?" A wave breaks and splashes up her calf, tiredness washing over her like a blanket. She scowls and storms away from the water. "I mean it. Don't even try." She makes sure she's up on the sand dunes before opening the basket, worried for her son's state. Taking him up Reverse Mountain had to be the #1 no-no for shaken baby syndrome. Yet Luffy just laughs when she opens the basket, smiling gummily as his uncoordinated arms try to reach for her. Rouge chuckles and lifts him up, cradles him to her chest so he can wrap his hands in her long hair. Of course she shouldn't be worried that a god was harmed by something as measly as a rough ride. Ace giggles at her as Rouge leads them away from the beach, following an overgrown overpath towards the city proper. They landed on the far side of the island to avoid unwanted eyes. It won't be good if they're spotted in Logetown. Ideally they would have made it further into the East Blue, but Rouge struggled with that short flight as it was. She needs to train her powers more before trying to island hop. She steals some clothes from a washing line on the outskirts of town as they pass. Pulling a dark cloak over herself and putting a too-big bucket hat over her 3-year-old's head. She makes sure Ace is holding her hand and Luffy's face is tucked away before entering the city proper. She had never been to Roger's hometown. He said he had nothing left to explore there and they always had more interesting adventures on the horizon. Rouge wonders if it had always been this despondent. She doubts it, the Pirate King's death seems to hang over the town like a miasma. She could spot Marines far off on the docks, eyeing everyone's comings and goings like they expected every other person to proclaim themselves the Pirate King. Civilians kept their heads down, so Rouge did too. It wasn't hard to look innocent with 2 adorable boys hanging off you. It also meant this wasn't the place for a dine and dash, at least, not in a well-watched part. So Rouge heads towards the shady area of town, following her gut like she has an internal compass for where lowlifes like to gather. She heads down a near-deserted street, where some people stand at the sides, keeping to low whispers and eyeing the figure in the cloak but making no move to intercept her. She scans the street signs looking for some sort of restaurant, or at least a place with a food storage they can break into, until she pauses. The sign hangs proudly in quite possibly the worst place in the world to put it. It's so stubborn and proud, in keeping with the man it took its namesake from. Rouge laughs and pushes open the door to the Gold Roger bar. The place is practically empty. Someone is slumped over the bar, half falling off the bar stool with bottles spread all around him. The barkeep hovers close to him, cleaning glasses idly. He looks like he was once a tall man, but age is catching up with him, making his shoulders slope. Gold Roger's bar, the man greets, the pride in his voice is unmistakable. "I'm Raoul, what can I get you?" A name change for one. Rouge chuckles good-naturedly, tugging Ace's hand to encourage him in. The little boy tried to hide behind her as the drunk at the bar snapped up. "You spelled it wrong, Gold Roger, not that I think he'd mind." The barkeep smirks at her and Rouge shares it. He has a spark in his eye, the sign of a man who has met and been changed by Roger. But he doesn't hold her attention long as the drunk man stumbles up. Rouge reflexively goes for her hidden knife. Rouge, knowing her name is dangerous, but the way it's spoken. Rouge takes a closer look at the man. No, not a man, still a boy. His stature is a few inches shorter than her own. He has deep bags under his eyes and creases that she knows are wrong on that face. It's the red hair that truly makes her pause. She looks behind the boy to the bar, where sitting atop it is an old, worn straw hat. "Shanks!" she yells. The boy looks at her like he can't believe she's real. Well, Rouge can fix that. She storms forward, letting go of Ace's hand, Luffy still held in one arm, but that doesn't stop her from grabbing the red head and yanking him into a hug. "Oh, my boy," she breathes in utter reverence. "You've grown so much." That does it for Shanks. She feels his entire body hitch with a sob before strong arms are wrapping around her. A face buries into her neck and she feels wet from the tears and heat from shuddering breaths. "It's all right, little gem," Rouge cards her free hand through his hair as he makes a wounded sound into her neck. "Shoo, I'm here, I've got you." Shanks wails and Rouge cradles his head close in response. She whispers soft reassurances like she did when he was a child, the last time he saw her. Gosh, he hadn't even come up to her shoulder on their last goodbye, barely a goodbye. She had been too heartsore from losing her crew to tell the boy what he needed to hear, what she needed to say. "Oh, my son," she squeezes him close. "I've missed you, I love you so much." A wet laugh startles out of the red head and it's entirely unfair on the boy that the statement shocks him so much. Worse still, that it makes him pull away and wipe his eyes, a wobbly smile in place. "Yeah, Shanks trails off, looking down at her arm. Rouge follows his gaze to Luffy, the baby squirming from when he was crushed between them. But the little scowl quickly melts off his face as he notices Shanks and smiles. The boy looks dumbfounded, but even in his stupor he can't stop the slight genuine uptick to his lips. "This is Luffy," Rouge explains, looking behind herself to Ace who's still shyly hovering by the door. She holds out her hand and the little boy runs forward to take it, clutching on tightly as he sticks close to her side. "And this is Ace. They're the captain's kids?" Shanks questions and Rouge lets go of Ace's hand long enough to flick the redhead's forehead. The boy looks at her shocked and pouting as he rubs the spot. "They're your brothers," Rouge says with a roll in her eyes, not missing the way her eldest son's eyes widen. "Ace, Luffy, say hi to your big brother." "You Shanks?" Ace questions, stars in his eyes that seem to take the 15-year-old aback. But the boy to his credit gets over his own shock quickly to crouch down on Ace's level. "Sure am." The boy chirps with a plastered-on smile that is so dim compared to what it was in his youth. Ace looks around the bar for the other half of every story he had been told. Rouge's stomach sinks with the tilt of his head. "Buggy?" Rouge heart aches as Shanks' expression just drops. He quickly corrects it, and it's hurtful how easy it seems to be for him. "Buggy and I split off." There's a pained grimace on the edge of his smile, that Rouge is absolutely going to ask about when the younger two are asleep. He's off on his own adventure right now. "And you're on yours clearly," Rouge says with a brow raised at the bottles surrounding Shanks' prized hat. She looks down sharply and Shanks says he already knows what's coming. "Shanks, you're 15. Shanks does not meet her eye, instead keeping his gaze on the floor. Rouge's head whips up, hair flying all over with the movement. The bartender Raoul freezes under her fury. "Did you know that? I thought he was a bit older." The man winces and folds under her rageful gaze. "But I knew he was young. Captain, let me drink." Shanks murmurs petulantly, still not looking at her. "Your father shouldn't have, besides, he was watching you. If not him, then the crew and Rayleigh would be looking out for their precious cabin boy." "Well, he's not anymore, is he?" Shanks' words are utterly bitter. She freezes under them, freezes at the tone, watches the way the boy's eyes go wide as he looks up at her and winces. "I'm sorry, I dash. It's okay." She leans down, running a thumb over his cheek. "I might be drunk." Shanks admits. "That's less okay, up you get," Rouge demands, pulling her son to stand. He's definitely unsteady on his feet. "We're getting some water in you, and some food, for all of us if you don't mind?" Raoul nods at the last part directed at him. He heads towards the back and Rouge calls out before he can disappear. A dangerous glint to her words. "You know who I am. You know who my boys are." She states the facts, her auburn eyes flaring and piercing the barkeep. "You plan to share that with anyone? Giving away Roger's family?" Raoul asks with that hint of reverence that she's heard from many loyal souls. "Never." Rouge smiles and waves him off to do what he needs to, with the final call to bring them lots of food. She helps Ace come sit on the bar stools. His little legs swing as he wiggles about. In his seat, wedged between Rouge and Shanks. Her eldest isn't looking at them. His gaze fixed on Roger's straw hat as he idly traces the brim. Here, hold him. Rouge passes Luffy over, biting down her chuckle at the absolute and complete panic that overtakes Shanks' face as he clambers to get a good hold before Rouge lets go. She plops the baby right into his arms, stretching her shoulders up with a groan. I've been carrying him all day, so you're on baby duty now. I don't really think that's a good idea, Shanks says as he keeps Luffy in one arm and struggles to push the empty bottles out of his reach. You'll be fine, Rouge smirks. Our Luffy's pretty tough, isn't that right, Ace? Mum, her son hums, head bobbing up and down so vigorously his chair shakes. Shanks moves his spare arm to steady the seat before it can tip over. He laughed the whole night when we hid that storm, and when we were on the beach making a fire and saw a sea king. Did cry when a crab he try now to grab pinched his finger, but was okay, 'cause I picked it up and threw it far away. You did a good job of protecting your little brother, huh? Shanks asks with an indulgent smile, startling at the fierce scowl Ace gives him. Our brother. Right, Shanks blinks, looking to Rouge for support. She simply quirks her brow at him. She'd been referring to Shanks and Buggy in her stories as Ace's big brother since he was born. If Shanks wanted to fight against that, he had a hell of a battle in front of him. Although it doesn't seem like one he's willing to start that fight as Luffy curls a fist in his shirt, it's stained all over the front. Rouge can take a guess with what, and Shanks stares adoringly down at the little bundle, as Luffy starts to nod off against his chest. Our brother. Shanks was coming with them out of Logtown. It wasn't a question. It never was. From the moment she noticed her 15-year-old drowning himself in a bar, he was coming with them. If Shanks needed to believe it was because Rouge could no longer swim to get the little ones if they fell overboard, she was willing to let him believe it, for now. It was also incredibly helpful having him around. Plus, as long as he was holding Luffy or Ace or getting supplies or finding them a boat, the less time he had for a bottle in his hand. Rouge had caught him more than once, late at night coming down to the bar to drink while they and Raoul were upstairs in the bartender's apartment. It was something she was going to have to deal with later. She had a fully stocked ship just big enough for 5 people, another son to find, and a goodbye to give. She pulls her dark cloak around herself, Ace and Luffy tucked into the folds while Shanks stands at her side. His eyes are wet when he stares up at the executioner's platform. You were here, weren't you? Rouge asks quietly. There aren't many people in the square but no one needs to overhear it. We both were, Shanks tips his hat down, shadowing his eyes. We thought the others would come. But they didn't. Where had they left her sons? On the Grand Line? In the New World? How could they just leave her boys? She did it. She left to mourn her crew. They left to mourn their captain. And Shanks had been in Logtown since getting kicked out of every bar other than the shrine dedicated to Roger. I'm here now, Rouge reassures, and she won't be breaking down this time. Not even as she stares up at the monument kept to crown her love's death. She clutches Ace and Luffy tight, takes Shanks' hand in her own. The ocean may have taken her crew from her, she may have lost her place on the open seas. But for her sons? For her sons, she would carve out a new place on those waters. She was not giving up when they needed her. Shanks' breath hitches and he can't even look at the platform. That can be solved. Stepping forward, she runs her hand along the wood. New but untreated, it hasn't been battered by the weather yet. It won't ever get the chance. Blue fire engulfs her hands. She coaxes the healing flames to burn, to only focus on destroying and tearing the hurt away from this place. There's gasps around the square as Rouge steps back, pulling her boys with her, and the pyre ignites in a pillar of blazing blue. The phoenix flames burn it down to ash, wiping away the pain so something new can form. Hey you! Someone calls out. Rouge hears the rattle of guns and the rhythmic stomping of marine-issued boots. Whoops, Rouge says cheekily as she watches the guards rush towards them. Are you boys ready to run? Shanks' awe-filled face is cast in blue as he looks up at the flames. A genuine smile takes over his expression and he finally looks like the young boy she once knew. He turns to her, laughter ringing out across this plaza for the first time since Roger himself. The boy that carries his hat and spirit lights the place up. Let's go. Now that she knew that her sons had been out there, alone, there was nothing on the seas that could stop Rouge from finding her last one. The problem with Buggy was he was clever and didn't have the bravado that plagued much of Roger's crew. Which meant that he was smart enough to know the world government would be bringing hell down on everyone associated with Roger, most of all his old crew. So Buggy would stay hidden to avoid the heat. He probably followed Rouge's own thought pattern of staying in the East Blue. Nobody would suspect the Roger pirates stayed in such an obvious spot, and this sea was safer than any other. Which luckily meant she didn't need to scour the whole world for him, just one sea. Buggy was also industriously clever and always looking for the most out of opportunities. The East Blue right now was teeming with pirates. It was the epicenter of Roger's new era. Which meant the Marines were cracking down here harder than anywhere else. Pirates getting chased towards the Grand Line for treasures the East simply didn't offer. In an isolated sea that didn't know much of the Grand Line, and half thought devil fruits a thing of fiction, Buggy's knowledge of those oceans would be a gold mine. It was a trail only someone who knew him would be able to find. Rouge follows the rumors, from bar to bar, of an informant who could offer you secret information about the Grand Line, rumors Marines didn't bother to follow. They were too busy or they were taking advantage of fools heading towards the Grand Line before they were ready. The weather or the journey itself would do more to wipe out pirate crews than cannonballs ever could. No, Buggy had found the perfect niche to lay low and make money. Rouge was DMN proud. After all the rumors, some she had to beat out of people, they arrive at a little dock in an old, partially abandoned village. It's clear pirates come through here often and she can't tell if the smokestacks are from fireplaces or houses still smoldering. Among it all is a small building tucked away at the edge of the dock, made of stone rather than wood. It's not flashy in the least and she has to commend her son's subtlety. She can imagine it's been grating on him but Buggy's self-preservation always trumped his pride. Ace tries to race down the dock but Rouge calls him back to help tie up the ship, grabbing his hand once they're done before he can try to run off again. He pouts but Rouge only indulges him with a smile, looking up next at her eldest. He's holding Luffy tight like a plushie, fretting while staying at the edge of the ship. Maybe you should go ahead? Shank's smile has a nervous tick. I can take care of Luffy. You're not going to let Buggy see his youngest brother? Rouge calls his bluff, seeing the way his face falls. She turns and heads down the wharf before he can fish around for another excuse. Come on, we don't want to be out in the open too long. News of her hasn't spread to the East Blue quite yet but the less they're seen, the better. Shanks drops down behind her and shuffles after Rouge. She leaves him to his pouting, already planning to give Buggy an earful about putting his brother in this state. As they walk along the dock, she sees small shapes zip out of sight. Speeding up, she swings Ace up on her hip, the boy settling there easily as he burrows into her side. Rouge makes it to the last in the line of houses, banging on the metal-reinforced door. She sees something settle on the windowsill and, moving silently, she approaches. The ear sits there, straining to hear her. Not trying to zip away until her hand slams down on it. Buggy, this is your mother, Rouge says, pinching his ear like she would when he misbehaved and pulling it close so he can hear her speak clearly. I know you saw me and your brothers at the dock and if you're trying to make your escape now so help me, I will hunt you down. There's a yelp and a crash from inside the building. Rouge doesn't let go of the ear, holding it up to Shanks as he hesitantly approaches. She gives the boy a look before he can argue. The redhead gulps before cautiously leaning forward. Hey Bugs? The ear quivers and tries to move out of Rogue's grip but she holds fast. Ace curiously reaches out and pokes at the disembodied ear, flinching back as it feels like real skin. He gets over his surprise quickly before reaching out again. Quit it! A mouth shouts, peeking out from the gaps in the boarded-up windows. The rest of the head isn't attached but she can see the way as the mouth pulls down into a scowl pointed in Shanks' direction. And I don't want to see you, PSS off. Shanks flinches at the harsh words. Rouge scowls and pinches tighter. Hey wait! Stop! No, stop! Ow! Buggy cries out at the sting. Apologize, Rouge says sternly, easing up. No! He's the one who screwed me over. Buggy shouts. Rouge looks at Shanks for answers but the boy just looks ashamed and sad. As he often did since they reunited. Fine, I'm coming up then, Rouge says. The boy yelps even if she has stopped pinching his ears so she clarifies. To check on you. I'm fine. Don't worry about it. Buggy rushes out, not taking the opportunity to complain. I'm a-okay Rouge. That's the final straw. When did her boys stop calling her mama? She hadn't even wanted the title when they first gave it to her, had smacked Roger when he laughed at her dumbstruck face. They didn't just get to take it back. No matter how long she had been out of their lives, she was their DMN mother. She pushes Ace into Shanks' arms, the boy struggling to balance both his younger brothers. Rouge doesn't wait, trusting him to sort himself, as she jumps right up to the second floor. Armament hockey covers her as she smashes clean through the window. The second she does, she can feel strings press into her and several machines whir. Rouge! She can hear Buggy shout all the way from the street, the yelling getting drowned out by several firecrackers. They burn like sunbursts across her skin, getting chased off by blue flames a moment later. Rouge straightens up and fixes her landing. She stands as plumes of smoke roll off her and as it clears, she can finally see him. His hair has grown longer. He would always whine and put up such a fuss when it came time to cut it, always said Roger didn't have to cut his short. He's taken to wearing makeup. Rouge can only see one of his eyes but he's wearing eyeliner like she taught him. His eye, the shock and fear in it has Rouge's heart clenching. Buggy reaching out with one arm extended, one gone. Halfway to protecting Rouge from his clever trap. "My boy," she breathes, winding her arms under his one and wrapping around his empty side to embrace him gently. "When did you grow up so big and strong?" Buggy doesn't speak, his mouth is still down below, but she can feel the way his head shakes fervently in denial. "Shoo, you really are." Rouge runs her hands through the blue hair spilling down his shoulders, most of it held up high in a ponytail but some of it coming loose. She glances around the room as the smoke clears. Thankfully, none of the explosions set fire to the many stacks of paper. She can't see what they have on them, she thinks some of them are codes. But in the center of the room, there's a desk, a half-finished map spread out over it. His pen drips ink on the spot where Sabaody is. There's more behind it, stuck to a wall as the ink dries out. So clever, she pulls back so Buggy can see her beaming smile. His remaining eye is wet and his mouth is still missing. She traces his face. Her thumb runs along the sharp cutout where the lower half of his face should be. His nose is shining bright red, which is good. Once, when he had gotten sick, it had gone so pale it almost drained of color completely while the rest of his face was red with fever. She and Roger had yelled at each other in a panic before Rayleigh had forced them out of the infirmary so Buggy could actually rest. "Have you been taking care of yourself, Firecracker?" The old nickname rolls off her tongue sweetly as she traces the bags under his eyes, an empty socket, that are almost as dark as the eyeliner. Buggy nods, his remaining arm twisting into her clothes, holding tighter as she steps back far enough to check him over. "Do you have all your pieces?" Rouge frets, running her hands over his shoulders where the left arm abruptly cuts off. He's missing one ear along with his mouth, but that's quickly solved as the lower half of his face comes flying through the open window, fixing itself back in place. "Yeah," Buggy's voice is rough and croaky, gaze sliding to the side to avoid hers now. "I know where everything is, they're just busy." "My clever boy." Rouge cups his face and Buggy ducks his head away. Rouge coaxes his head back up, making him look at her, and this time she asks softly, "Why won't you talk with your brother?" "He's not my brother." Buggy spits but quickly looks away so he doesn't have to meet her disapproving expression. She lets the silence, the disappointment, do its work until Buggy starts to squirm but doesn't pull away from her hands. "He broke his promise to the captain." "What promise was that?" Rouge brushes the stray hair out of his face. Buggy's shoulders slump, her son looks so tired. "He promised he'd go see Laugh Tale himself one day, he promised." Buggy's one hand comes up to clutch at her arms. Eye on her, imploring Rouge to understand. Now Captain's dead and he's just not going to? The question tears out of Buggy, his voice raw and catching in his throat. He holds her arm so tightly that her devil fruit powers warm up the spot preemptively as her son clings. Shanks was his hope, his pride, he got the DMN hat. Tears roll down one side of his face, his eyeliner strkng with it as his voice starts blubbering. Captain's last words were to go after the treasure, the whole world's gunning for it, while Shanks, the one he left it for, isn't. Buggy slumps forward and Rouge is there to catch him, rubbing the boy's back as his whole frame moves with the force of his sobs, jolting unevenly as he tries to SCK in air. He's going to let someone else steal everything Captain left for him. Buggy murmurs, his words despondent. His voice is hollow as if all the passion had bled out of him. He whispers into her hair, his words bitter but dejected. He's being a coward, he's not meant to be the coward. Rouge holds her son close. She doesn't know what to say. She barely grasps the depths of her boy's pain. When had he started thinking he was a coward? Was less than his brother in some way? Shanks had always looked up to Roger as someone who he could become one day. A role model that was possible to live up to. But Buggy? Buggy had admired his father. Someone larger than life, untouchable and bold. Had he given up on becoming that? Or had he never thought it was possible in the first place? "I'm sorry, Bugs." They both jump, Buggy high enough that his devil fruit power has his head knocking the ceiling. The boy doubles over, his legs reattaching to his feet. Buggy rubs at the spot as he sinks to the floor groaning. Rouge spins around to look at Shanks. The redhead is sitting on the charred windowsill. Head angled down so his hat makes it impossible to see anything but the tremble to his lips. "I'm not trying to, I'm not avoir dash," Shanks groans, scrubbing a hand over his face. "I'm not him." Buggy scoffs from the ground but Rouge gestures at him sharply to listen. Shanks hears it anyway, lips quirking into a smirk that she doesn't need to see his eyes to know it's not reaching them. "I'm not that man, the one who faced every battle with a grin. Larger than life. Fearless. Gold Roger." Shanks curls in on himself. Rouge knew for a fact that the Oro Jackson had a tally counter in their kitchen for each time a newspaper spelt the name Gold Roger, not Gold Roger. "I'm not him, not yet, so I can't. Shanks cuts off, tears trailing down and dribbling on his chin. Buggy is still on the floor. The boy bites his lip as it wobbles. The streak of eyeliner coming from his remaining eye makes it look like he never stopped crying. You're both so foolish. I guess we have your father to thank for that. Rouge sighs deeply, getting both her boys' attention to snap to her. Roger never explained his intentions properly. He spoke grand words and left others to decide what they meant. Apparently, spelling it out took away the freedom and excitement. But he wasn't here to help raise their boys anymore, so Rouge DMN well would be. Shanks, Roger didn't want you to become him. Rouge says, the boy's head looking up so she can meet his eyes, to get across how serious about this she was. Do you really think he'd want you to be anybody less than yourself? Shanks' head lowers. He shakes his head, the gesture is barely there, but it's there. And Buggy, your father's legacy doesn't begin and end with some treasure or goal, not even the title of Pirate King. Anyone who manages to get that far is deserving of it. She knew half the world was rushing to Laugh Tale right now and it was doubtful anybody would make it. Do you think he'd appreciate you boys rushing through a half-hearted adventure you weren't ready for? Buggy's head hangs, murmuring something Rouge doesn't catch, that she wasn't meant to catch. Roger didn't want anything for you boys other than the freedom to do exactly what you wanted. The only way to dishonor his legacy is to chain yourselves to it. Besides she claps her hands before they can process. I need your help here, so neither of you are going anywhere until both of your little brothers are past their terrible twos at least. Buggy's brows furrow at the term brother, then terrible twos, but it's Shanks that laughs wholeheartedly. I thought we were meant to do whatever we wanted? The redhead grins, tipping his hat up. That's Roger's legacy. Rouge crosses her arms and scowls. Mine is making sure all my boys make it to adulthood despite their best efforts. That gets Shanks to laugh harder, and even startles a chuckle out of Buggy. The blue-haired boy's shoulder relaxes. What d'ya say, Bugsy? Shanks grins against the scowl Buggy sends him. Wanna help out, or stay holed up? The boy's scowl intensifies and Rouge readies herself for another one of those shouting matches that would echo across the water. Half the time she heard the Oro Jackson before the lookouts in her crew spotted it. However, the weight of the day catches up to him, exhaustion from his tears and anger dragging his shoulders down. If the goal is to keep a couple of brats alive, shouldn't you stay behind? Buggy shoots back half-heartedly. The smile Shanks gives his brother is the brightest Rouge has seen. Yet, Buggy crosses his arms, slouching back against the boat's railing. It's not even a ship, it's too small, and it's weird sailing without a Jolly Roger overhead. Shanks had pouted and said the same thing, which Buggy yelled at him for. Of course they couldn't fly a Jolly Roger. Really, they shouldn't be sailing at all. It would be best to just dig a hole and stay there until the storm passed. Which is what Buggy had been doing. He had a good racket going, maps to the Grand Line were invaluable, a list of islands in paradise was worth his weight in gold. And if anybody doubted him, he'd just throw out an idle comment about log poses and watch their faces fall as they had no idea what that was. The suckers practically scrambled over themselves to pay Buggy for the most basic information. He salivated at how much money he could make if he shared information about which marine bases were well protected and which were basically for show, what islands in the New World were like, or the route the Pirate King took to Raftel. Idiot, Buggy scowled as he reprimanded himself. That would have the Marines on my butt in a second. Information about Paradise was safe. Any old schmuck from the Grand Line would know this stuff. It didn't immediately paint Buggy as a pirate. If the Marines investigated, he could just say he was a merchant that decided tidings were better in the East. Of course, the best-case scenario was avoiding the Marines entirely, but, with his current company, he doubted that would last for long. Rouge was prancing around the boat, pulling at the ropes, manipulating the sails like it was some kind of dance. Buggy remembered her old skiff, the way it would frolic through the waves whether it was a calm day, a raging storm, or the Marines were right on her tail. Riding on that skiff was exhilarating, although he had insisted on only doing it on calm days. Once, a freak storm had come along while he and Shanks were riding and Buggy had refused to get on it again. Even if this boat is clunkier, made for actually living on, Rouge moves around it with grace, playing the winds and tides like a fiddle. She looks spirited, which is a surprise, and it's a surprise that it's a surprise because for most of his life, Rouge had never been anything less. Buggy wondered how long he had been unconsciously remembering the woman who left the seas. Her despondent eyes as they pulled her out of her beloved ship's wreckage. The flat way she looked at the bodies piling up on deck as the Roger pirates recovered whoever they could. Buggy had sat worriedly beside her, unable to swim. She hadn't even acknowledged him as Buggy pressed into her side, tears silently slipping down Rouge's face. The woman had loved the ocean more fiercely than any pirate he knew, had greeted waves with a smile and played in sea foam. Yet too many times had Buggy woken up to her on the deck, screaming across the water, cursing the seas. She'd scream herself hoarse until she collapsed into the side of the boat, Captain draping his coat over her and guiding her inside. Rayleigh had said staying on the water was like torture for her now. They had left Rouge on the end of a pier, her dead-eyed stare watching the Oro Jackson glide across the waves. That gaunt and haunted face was what came to mind every time he thought of Rouge over the years. That wasn't the woman he was sailing with now. This Rouge was like the one he knew all those years ago. The only one that could match their captain's spirited passion. Whenever she joined them on adventures, they went from dangerous to utterly insane. But Rouge was always there to protect as well. More than once, Buggy had caught sight of her blonde hair and thought an angel had come to protect him by getting between him and his attacker. Although, a demon would probably be more accurate with the ferocity she met them with. Ferocious was too gentle a word for the storm that was Port Gas de Rouge. Buggy had once witnessed her single-handedly sink a vice admiral's ship because the man had put a small tear in her favorite dress. The same dress Buggy had absolutely scorched when experimenting with his buggy bombs. He had completely frozen when Rouge reached up, only to pat his head, laughing and calling him Firecracker for the first time. Now, because of that stupid little nickname, he was dragged back out to sea. DMN Shanks, where was he months ago? Buggy had made sure he could be found. The idiot redhead shouldn't have needed Rouge to come along to make it happen. Now the moron was smiling as if nothing was wrong. As if he hadn't been dodging talking to Buggy since they got on this boat. All Shanks had done so far was use babysitting as an excuse to avoid him. Playing with the baby and toddler, the captain's kids, using them like shields against Buggy. Did he think all was forgiven? If it was, then why was Buggy still seething? The sight of him was irritating, always had been. But now whenever Buggy looked at him, something churned in his gut like a deep sickness. He didn't know what it was, but he knew it was all Shank's fault. He's just playing with Ace, the little brat who won't listen every time Buggy insists they aren't brothers. He hates it because every time he has to remind the kid, Rouge's face falls and it's not fair. He doesn't even know the kid. Why do they expect him to just go along with it? He's not Shanks, smiling like a lunatic after the brat as he runs to go help Rouge with the rigging. Buggy scoffs as she has to stop her work to lift the boy up so he can see. Please, if he got in the way like that when he was a cabin boy, he'd get a lecture about what it takes to keep a ship running, not an indulgent smile as he messes up the knot work completely. Fortunately, Rouge doesn't hear his scoff. Unfortunately, Shanks does. The redhead looks over at him hesitantly. Buggy slouches down more and tries to project "don't fing talk to me" as hard as he possibly can, which he should know has never once worked on Shanks. Rather, it seems to draw him in like a moth to a flame. Hey Bugs. Shanks smiles, plopping down next to him with that DMN baby still in his arms. PSS off, Buggy spits, turning his head away so he doesn't have to see the earnest expression he knows is there. You're still mad at me? The pout in his voice is clear and Buggy hates how he can picture the exact expression. What gave you that idea? He looks the opposite way, arms crossed. Will you tell me why? Shanks' voice is closer. Buggy can feel his presence as he leans in, tries to lean around to see his face. Can feel something tug at his clothes and knows it's Luffy's hand, not Shanks'. Figure it out yourself. He shakes his arm but the stupid baby holds fast. Can you tell me why? Damn it, Shanks always getting to the heart of it. Whatever, he doesn't know the redhead an explanation anyway, so the fact that he can't give one shouldn't mean anything. Buggy, Shanks whines because he's always been a big baby. Even if the crew would have said Buggy was the baby of the two, he was more mature than Shanks. I will go to Laugh Tale someday, just not right now. Rouge said dash. I know what Rouge said. Buggy snaps, turning sharply to glare. The movement managed to rip Luffy's hand off his clothes, making the baby blubber. Shanks immediately starts shushing the brat, bouncing him in place. He's doing everything he can to cater to the small needy thing like it's the only thing in the world that matters. Then he looks up at Buggy like he's the disappointing one? How much longer are you going to let other people hold you back? Bugs dash. You should have already been to Laugh Tale, spittle flies as Buggy shouts. Figured out the secrets of the universe or whatever got into the rest of the crew. Because what else could have happened that made the people that raised them decide to up and leave? They must have figured out something amazing, had known the only way to protect them from it was to leave or that they, Shanks, could only become strong enough if they did. There had to be a reason. Shanks was meant to know that reason. But he got held back, by Buggy, like always. But Shanks promised Captain he would go himself. He would find out why. Instead he was here, looking after a dumb baby, being held back from the greatness he was meant to achieve. Instead you were stuck playing nursemaid, Buggy sick and feverish, Shanks promising to not to leave his side. All because Buggy was too weak, Shanks got left behind too. If he had gone with them to Laugh Tale, would the crew still have? And now playing babysitter. Buggy had left. Shanks said he didn't want to go yet. He had figured the other was worried about carrying around his dead weight again. So he had left. Shanks could have been free. Instead he clung to the next weakest thing he could find. I think you should hold Luffy. Shanks decides, looking at Buggy like what he's saying is somehow important or at all related to what they were talking about. I don't want to hold the brat. It wasn't about the kid, it was about Shanks being an idiot. Come on Buggy, just give it a try. Great, back to whining. He employs the best defense he has against Shanks and looks away, ignoring him. Bugs? Buggy? Please? Bugsy? Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Yeah, it never did work well. He gives in, grabbing the stupid baby. Still being careful, this is Captain and Rouge's kid, he may be annoying but Buggy wouldn't hurt him even accidentally. Mostly because Rouge would be super scary about it. So he makes sure the brat's head is supported and all that jazz before spitting at Shanks. There. Happy now? Are you? Shanks has that teasing grin on his face like he's won something. Buggy is about to snap no, on principle, before he hears a giggle. It's startling enough to look down and when he does, Luffy is staring right back at him. Big wide eyes, too big for his stupid pudgy head. Chubby hands grasp onto Buggy's clothes and twist. The grip is strong but not that strong, how can it be when the brat's hands are so small? Everything about him is too small, except for that wide gummy grin. He looks stupidly at Buggy as if he's the best thing the baby's ever seen. PSH, no. He snaps out of whatever that was and shoves the baby back toward Shanks. You can deal with his stink and screaming all on your own. Luffy doesn't really cry much, Shanks shrugs, holding his arms up high so Buggy can't drop the brat back into them. Nothing to say against the stench then? Luffy giggles as Buggy tries to find a way to get Shanks to take him without jostling the weak thing too much. Stupid, doesn't even realize the damage Buggy could do if he drops him. Not really. Shanks says, his smile is utterly fond looking down at but refusing to take Luffy off his hands. You're disgusting. Buggy grouses, settling the baby back into his arms because apparently Shanks is going to be stubborn about this. And I'm still mad at you. Because he won't let him forget it. There's something Shanks promised to do and Buggy isn't going to let him give it up for a happy family fantasy, not for long anyway. Rouge does need their help. She doesn't deserve to get abandoned with two hellions to take care of. Besides, they're in the East Blue, even he can handle whatever these seas can throw at them. Until the Marines catch wind of them anyway, that will be a whole different story. He'll just have to stop that from happening, sees nobody else on this ship has heard of subtlety. But you forgive me though? Shanks leans in close, getting all up in his space like they're best friends again. Buggy should push him away to make it clear that they aren't, that he's mad, but well, he's still holding Luffy. So he settles for a scoff and focuses on chubby cheeks that seem even chubbier with how wide the kid's grin is stretched. Fine, family fantasy, but only for a little while. What gave you that idea? Rouge is lying back on the ship's deck, staring up at the clouds while they drift lazily by as she listens to the sound of her sons and the waves. Luffy has been learning to sit up. A source of endless amusement as his head is still much too heavy and he keeps tipping over. Rouge doesn't need to watch, she knows that while Shanks and Ace may giggle every time it happens, they are always there to catch him. Plus Buggy keeps an eye out despite his tinkering off to the side, in case the other two get distracted. Rouge has the sail set and the rudder locked, making a straight shot to some small island. The location itself doesn't really matter as long as it has meat. If they're lucky, something huntable as well so Buggy doesn't keep fretting over their budget so much. No matter, he'll be able to sell his information to the aspiring pirates at whatever port they land in. She knows her son values money, as a good pirate should. She'll make up what he's spending on them once the little ones are older. She's thinking a few marine base raids, maybe a treasury or two in some corrupt kingdom. Geez, being on the sea again is bringing out the piratey impulses she's tried to bury over the years. We've got a ship incoming. Buggy calls, Rouge rolls over to look. One of the boy's eyes is missing but still he stands, shielding his face against the sun to look out over the water. Rouge sits up as Ace runs to the stern to get a better look. From afar she can see the wood of the boat and the black flag hanging over it, although can't make out the Jolly Roger. Pirates! Ace cheers, leaning far over the rail. Buggy's hand detaches as it grabs onto the back of his shirt. Bad news. He says grimly, his eye flying back into place. All right everyone, plan Carnation counterfeit. Hate plan Karna, hate, Ace settles on. Too bad, Buggy's disembodied hand pulls Ace away from the railing while he turns towards the rest of them, one hand on his hip. Everyone to your stations. Shanks, get rid of that sword, Rouge. Put the knife down. Buggy fusses as he hides some money in a hidden compartment. The rest of their money is in a secret hidden compartment, while their most important maps and weapons are in the super secret hidden compartment. Rouge ends up hugging the youngest two, as they sit in a corner out of the way on deck while Buggy and Shanks make a show of trying to get away. If they were really trying, Rouge would be on the ropes. Her boys have practice, after spending most of their lives at sea, but they don't have her instinct for it. The pirate ship catches up soon enough. The Jolly Roger isn't one she recognizes, and as men pile onto their little boat she can't pick out any from wanted posters. Pirates are popping up in the East Blue faster than the Marines can print paper. You have to be able to stand out from the crowd to earn a bounty. Wait, please no wait, we don't have anything. Buggy's voice wobbles as the pirates loom over him, the 15-year-old falling into shadow under them. We're just trying to get to the next island, our village was destroyed and GAH. Buggy gets slapped out of the way. Rogue's fists clench in Ace's clothes and she pulls the boy closer. Buggy flies into the opposite railing, partly having to throw himself because the hit wasn't that strong, but anyone laying a hand on her boy makes Rouge's blood boil. Wait, please, we have children on board. Buggy cries out, cradling his cheek. Mean stares turn to Rouge and she pulls her youngest tighter to herself. Shanks comes to stand protectively in front of them, his jaw clenched, his whole body wired for the moment they go too far. We don't have time for your blubbering, a man with a hat that towers over him drawls. The hat and the way the men look at him implies he's the captain here, but he's hardly deserving of such a title. He's a sailor with a gun. Nothing about him is awe-inspiring enough to make him a captain. Where's your money? The captain demands, mean smirk set on Buggy. Please sir, no, it's all we have. Buggy blubbers, reaching for the man's pants to plead. But the captain kicks him away, gesturing for his men to go into the cabin. There's crashing and ripping, and when Buggy pleads mercy, he's kicked in the stomach. Ace growls lowly in his throat and Rouge echoes it. But she holds her baby boy close when he tries to pull away. Buggy was always silent when he was in pain, choking back cries so nobody knew he was hurt. Here he wails loudly, like his misery is a performance. Shanks and Rouge only hold their place because they both know that. This is all they had, Captain. A pirate tosses a small purse of coins, the man catches it with barely a rattle. He frowns at the light contents. Stashed away and everything, for that pathetic haul. Please, Buggy's voice whimpers, it's all we have. Shut up. The captain kicks him sharply in the stomach, pocketing the bag before talking to his crew. This was a waste of time, let's go. Buggy sobs as the pirates climb back up the ropes. None of them have quite the talent for acting her son does, so Rouge just keeps her head down and Ace in place so Buggy's plans aren't ruined at the last moment. The pirate ship slips off with jeers. They wait for it to be out of hearing range, the pirates paying no mind to the poor civilians they just robbed. They're out of sight now. Shanks informs, rubbing his hands through his hair. Buggy instantly sits up. A bruise already smarting on his cheek. His eyes are dry now as he rubs at his cheek, scowling. I've got to wash off my mascara first next time. He huffs, black tear tracks running down his face. This is going to be a pain to clean off. You alright, Bugs? Shanks asks with an easy-looking grin, and Rouge would believe it if his fists weren't still clenched at his sides, trembling. Buggy gives his brother a mighty scowl. Just who do you take me for? The boy shouts, jumping onto his feet. Do you really think some weak hits like that would take me down? Hell, they were practically love taps compared to hockey. Alright Bugs, I know, Shanks holds his hands up in surrender. Buggy keeps glaring at him so Shanks looks around to take the attention off of him. Is everyone else alright? Hate plan, Ace sulks, sitting in Rouge's lap. He pouts up at Buggy as the boy smears mascara across his cheek trying to get it off. Should fight. Yeah, well that would be stupid. Buggy dismisses, ignoring Ace's dirty look. It's Shanks who chuckles and scoops his little brother up. Don't be too upset, Roger used to pull stuff like this all the time. Dad did? Ace looks up at Shanks in wonder, and this time the red-head smile is genuine. Sure, he used to just play along to avoid bar fights all the time, especially when we were hanging around the South Blue. This is different to that. Buggy snaps, giving up on clearing his makeup and heading towards the cabin. Captain avoided fights because he was too strong and would wreck everything. We're strong enough to take down those guys. Shanks sulks and Ace bobs his head up and down in agreement. Obviously, Buggy rolls his eyes, ducking his head into the cabin. God damn it, they wrecked everything. Rouge stands up, balancing Luffy in one arm. Peeking in through the doorway, Buggy is right. Some blankets are ripped, most of the furniture is smashed. The uneven board they hide there, to steal gold, has been pried up and snapped in half. Buggy's amongst it sorting through the trash. Rouge grabs hold of Ace's arm as his brothers move about the cabin to clean. Smashed dishes no good for the child's bare feet. Should fight it, Ace says again, crossing his arms. Rouge sighs, picking him up and stepping into the mess. Strong. Yeah? And what happens when rumor gets out that we are strong? And someone comes sniffing? Buggy asks harshly, pushing aside the dining table with a snapped leg to be fixed later so Shanks has room to sweep. What happens when the Marines come looking and recognize us? What then, huh? Ace looks sullen when Rouge sweeps aside some broken glass to place him on the kitchen nook's counter. He looks confused and hurt, all of the things Buggy's worrying about too big for a boy his size. Too big for a boy Buggy's size too. There's a lot of dangerous people out there. Rouge soothes, placing Luffy into the child's arms, making sure he has a proper hold. It helps that Luffy can sit up now and lean against his chest. Your big brother is protecting us from them. Like Dad? Like Dad, Rouge reassures, brushing the hair out of Ace's face. No, not like Captain. Buggy scoffs, ignoring the sharp whack Shanks gives his ankles with the broom. Captain didn't get into fights because he was strong, we're avoiding them because we're weak. Too weak to protect or stand up against the Navy, so we're hiding, we're cowering. Buggy curses as he kicks a broken chair leg aside, crouching down to pick through the bigger parts of shrapnel. Rouge meets Shanks' eyes over his brother's head. The boy looks worried and a bit imploring. Rouge turns to shush Ace before he can say something that makes Buggy steam more, reassuring her little boy with a smile. Shanks moves to the side as she picks her way through the wreckage, sweeping things into a pile while Rouge kneels next to Buggy. Things crunch under her knees, but Phoenix flames quickly fix any broken skin before she can bleed through her dress. Firecracker? Are you okay? Rouge leans close, trying to get a good look at her boy's face. I'm fine, he says against gritted teeth. Rouge frowns and reaches out, cupping his cheek and guiding him to look at her. There's a bruise blossoming where her hand touches and she gently coaxes fire to her palms. The flames lick at Buggy's cheek and the boy flinches on reflex before relaxing into the warmth. When she pulls her hand away, there's no bruise left. Can I check your ribs as well? She asks, waiting for Buggy to nod before lifting his shirt. It's mainly his stomach that is purpling, but that is washed away with more blue flames. They work slower on other people than they do Rouge, but it's another great ability, one that will keep her boys safe. You don't have to keep doing this, she reassures, letting her hand settle on a particularly nasty spot until it's soothed. It's the best option, Buggy says firmly, and it's not like Shanks or you can take the role, you're acting SCKS. Rouge laughs while Shanks splutters some defense. My clever boy, she smiles and Buggy looks sharply away from it. Rouge finishes up her healing and takes his face into her hands again. Thank you for protecting us. I'm not, Captain would have dash. Roger left us to handle ourselves. He had such faith in their skills, in the people around him, that the man sometimes forgot that the most dangerous thing to people was themselves. Why would he? He was someone who had complete confidence in every action he took. But we're not going to do that, we're going to look out for each other, okay, Firecracker? Rouge asks and Buggy finally meets her eyes. He's not crying again, but his wet eyes and the already smeared mascara make it look like he is. Okay, Buggy's shoulders slump like he can't quite believe in it, believe in them. Little gem? Rouge twists around to look at her boy, who's given up pretending to sweep. Of course. He says with loyal determination. Me too. Ace shouts out, getting everyone's attention on him as he clutches Luffy close, stubbornness etched over his face, looking every bit like Roger. Gonna protect you. Good, the seas aren't going to know what hit them. Rouge smirks, Luffy giggling along with her declaration, no one messes with our family. Shanks was ecstatic when they decided to make port in a sizable town. A bigger town meant more bars, and it had been so long since he'd been able to slip off and have a drink. He was responsible, made sure Ace and Luffy were asleep. Rouge too for good measure. Buggy had stirred when Shanks tried to sneak out. His friend glaring at him before rolling over with a huff. Shanks had silently thanked him as he slipped out. He found a bar of decent size down the dock. All he needed was a charming smile and slight exaggeration about his age before he was drinking and laughing along with the sailors there. Booze flowed and Shanks sank into the excitement, everyday worries and bad memories getting murky compared to off-key songs and finding the bottom of the next bottle. It was good, then the door slams open. The bar stops dead still as Rouge's silhouette stands in the doorway, a murderous look etched on her face. Drunks scramble to get out of her way as Rouge storms forward. Shanks groans and grabs his drink before she can make it to him. Red, I swear on all the seas, if you don't put that bottle down. Her hair whips behind her as men twice her size stumble out of her path. Ha, kid, I think your old lady's come to get you. A man who has been sitting next to him, regaling a naive kid with fantastical tales of the sea, slaps his back. The bottle jolts away from his lips. Shanks groans as he sloshes it around, finding it empty anyway. When did that happen? She's not my mother, Shanks corrects, surly. Rouge pauses just before reaching him. He looks up and the hurt flashing across her face isn't fair. She had just shown up on the ship from time to time. Shanks hasn't even seen her in years. She was too busy raising another kid. One she stuck around for. Whether you think that or not, you're coming home. Rouge's voice is steely as she grabs his arm, tugging him off the bar stool. Shanks fights against her grip but the alcohol is doing its work, making the bar spin. I'm fine. Shanks jerks out of her hold, almost toppling over. I can handle this, I've handled worse than a little booze. She looks back at him doubtfully. Like he's a child. Like he hasn't been protecting himself and Buggy since the crew left them. Like it wasn't her who had come barging back into their lives suddenly, demanding this and that, just like the captain. Shanks scowls and turns around to swipe up any bottle within reach. He misses the mark, seeing double, and when he tries again, the bottle slides out of his reach. He growls and looks behind himself to Rouge, but the woman has her arms crossed and is glaring daggers at someone over Shanks' head. He looks back at the barkeep, vision blurring as he tries to make out the man's sheepish face. Sorry kid, you're cut off. Shanks scowls at the man who had given him a bottle of rum not 5 minutes ago. Grits his teeth at the laughter that shakes up the bar, digging nails into his head. Is it bedtime already, boy? Run home with Mama now. Mama the first time had been a joke, the crew goading him into it. Shanks, being a stupid kid who had been on a ship since he was an infant, didn't even know what it meant. Rouge had never told him to stop, but she had left. Like his uncles, like his dad. Even now she grits her teeth, glaring at the drunken sailors laughing. Righteous protective furry, and she looks like him. You dash. Let's just go, Shanks grumbles, brushing past Rouge and her trembling fists. The bar's no fun now, it just reminds Shanks of him. He pushes the door open, leaving the bright lights for the brisk night air. He stumbles slightly, heading towards the boat. Not the Oro Jackson, not even a pirate ship. Rouge quickly catches up with him, her footsteps clicking against the cobblestone. Her hand brushes Shanks as he sways and he pushes it aside. You didn't have to come after me, he growls, his mouth tastes dry and awful now. The way it always did when he took a break between drinks. He had learnt that if he just kept at it the burn would keep the nasty aftertaste at bay. You disappeared in the middle of the night, Rouge accuses, her voice softens. Of course I did. She can't say that like it's obvious. It's not. He had gotten lost in bars from Loungetown to the Grand Line. No one came to drag him out. At best, Buggy would find him the next morning, slumped in the street, kicking at his legs to get Shanks up while the redhead uses his hat to shield out the sun. I will always come to get you, Shanks. No you won't, he spits. You didn't. She had chosen to watch them leave, standing at the end of the dock. For months afterwards, Shanks expected her to show back up, her skiff surfing over the waves and laughter ringing across the water. She never did, and the pain in his captain's eyes whenever Shanks asked where Mama was eventually got the boy to stop asking altogether. I won't let that happen again. Rouge's hand lands on his shoulder, steadying him when he threatens to tip over. Shanks just scoffs. The booze makes it hard to articulate how much he doubts that. But Rouge stays there, steady and sure. She doesn't let him shake her off. Not until they're through the cabin doors, immediately being greeted with a screeching cry that makes Shanks cringe and protect his ears. Buggy is on his bunk. He looks irritated, dark shadows under his eyes and a grimace set in place. He's leaning against the wall, with Luffy cradled in his arms rocking the crying infant idly. Luffy has fat tears rolling down his face and absolutely screeches his lungs out. Ace is beside Buggy, head lolled onto his shoulder tiredly while still trying to distract and play with Luffy. The baby is having none of it, squirming and screaming bloody murder in a way Shanks has never heard from the happy baby. He hasn't stopped crying since he figured out you were gone, Buggy says weary, meeting Shanks' eye. There's an accusation in his voice as he stares Shanks down. Get over here before I send my ears into the ocean. Shanks nods silently and stumbles his way over, running into a chair in the dark cramped cabin. Buggy shuffles to the side as Shanks plops down, but he doesn't get too far as he lays his spinning head on the other's shoulder. Hey Luffy, Shanks' words slur and he places a hand in front of the baby's face. Luffy sobs hitch with a wet gasp. His little face scrunched up and eyes trying to squint past his watery tears. Shanks sees the moment he recognizes the bright red hair. His little face relaxing into the biggest grin, the last of his tears still running down his face. Luffy reaches his arms out and Shanks breaks. Instead of Luffy crying, he is. He drunkenly clambers to take hold of the baby. Buggy helping him, disembodied hands moving and fretting making sure Shanks is holding Luffy properly as he presses the child to his chest and sobs into the crown of his head. Sorry, didn't mean to leave you, Shanks blubbers, rocking the two of them as Luffy's tiny fist curls into his clothes. Sorry, won't, not again, not going to abandon you. I'm sorry, don't cry. Luffy definitely isn't the one crying anymore. He doesn't even seem to mind Shanks' messy tears spilling over his face. Shanks just rubs his face into the fine baby hairs, sobbing more intelligible apologies. Geez, how much did you drink to get blubbering this bad? Buggy scoffs off to his side. Shanks feels a weight fall on his shoulder, and when he turns he can just make out blue through the tears. Throw up on me and I stab you. Shanks laughs wetly at the others grousing. But Buggy doesn't tell him off for it. Doesn't even tell Ace off for curling up against him. By the seas, he's such a mess. The kid really doesn't need to be seeing him like this. Or tomorrow when he's groaning and miming about a hangover. Buggy's probably going to try and make Luffy cry again just to make Shanks learn his lesson. The bed on his other side dips, Rouge tentatively sitting on the edge. She's looking at them all so fondly but making no move closer. Shanks whines low in his throat, something raw and needy. He's not even sure what he's asking but knows he needs something. Rouge seems to know as she shifts up the bed, bracketing his other side. Baby red, shhh baby I got you. Rouge's hands run through his hair. Fingers scratching along his scalp as they travel under his hat. None of us are leaving my boy. A light kiss is pressed to the bridge of his nose and he weeps with it, turning his head to burrow in her shoulder. Warmth and weight press into him on every side, and for the first time since he watched the Oro Jackson sail off, he doesn't feel alone. Sorry, Shanks whispers, not sure if Rouge can even hear him mumbling into her shoulder. Mama. Their little boat was docked at a small village port for supplies. Supplies which Buggy insisted on being the one to go get because, apparently, they wouldn't make it back to the ship in one piece if Rouge came with. Joke's on him, because Ace insisted on coming along and her little boy was just as bad. Shanks had stayed behind, Luffy monopolizing his attention. Lou was starting to learn how to stand with people holding him up, which meant his new favorite activity was bouncing in place while someone supported him. Shanks didn't seem to mind in the least, the biggest smile on his face whenever Luffy squealed happily. Rouge was no better, tending to the stove and grinning to herself whenever she heard the joyful noise. We've got a problem, Buggy burst through the cabin door, dropping bags full of supplies without a care. It was certainly a flashy entrance and had them all paying attention. Buggy didn't explain until Ace, who was trailing behind, was inside and the cabin door was tightly closed and locked for good measure. Firecracker, what's got you so worried? Rouge snuffs the stove's flames, weaving her way out of the kitchen to the living nook where everyone was gathered. This. Buggy slams a piece of paper down on the table with a flourish. Rouge and Shanks frown, leaning over to get a good look. It's a wanted poster, with an extraordinarily high bounty. A wanted poster of Rouge. It's a picture from the night she escaped Batarilla. One of the Marines must have had a camera handy, rather than trying to help kill her. In it, she has one hand on the ropes, the other over her PRGNNT belly. Her tattered dress and wild hair flare behind her with a manic grin on her face as she sails right towards the Marine ship. You look badass, Shanks whistles. Rouge smirks as she can't help but agree, it's probably the most fierce picture she's had for a wanted poster yet, including the one with the burning Marine base in the background. No, this is not a good thing. Buggy screeches, pointing at the bounty which is higher than all the old prices for her head combined, but that's not the part that catches her attention. Excuse me? She snatches up the paper. Portgas de Rouge, the Pirate Queen? The paper crinkles under her grip, tearing in places. How dare they replace my old moniker? That is not the problem here. Buggy snatches back the wanted poster. They know you're alive. Or at least suspect it. Do they know she's in the East Blue? Shanks frowns, taking the wanted poster to read the fine print, holding the paper away from Luffy as he reaches for it. I doubt it, Buggy sighs deeply, they've probably sent this to each Blue, trying to cast a wide net. It is going to make it harder to move around unnoticed, Rouge allows, sitting back with her arms crossed. But I won't lie, I liked being Hibiscus Rouge. Again, really not our biggest problem right now. It's up there. Hide more. Ace asks in a small voice. The three older people in the room startle and share a look as the almost 4-year-old watches nervously. Hey Spitfire, Rouge pulls her little boy in close, running her thumb along his freckles. Could you go be a brave boy and stand watch outside the door? Come right in if anyone approaches the boat, okay? Ace nods shakily, but his expression is nothing but determined. Buggy has to send a hand to help him open the door because the little one can't even reach the handle. Rouge sighs deeply when the door shuts behind him. Luffy, for his part, looks guilelessly around in the tense atmosphere. It's probably not a good idea to hide out on any one island too long. Buggy scrubs a hand through his hair, making strands fall out of his ponytail. It only takes one person recognizing you to sell us out. And anyone caught harboring us is going to have a target painted on their back. Shanks adds, bouncing Luffy idly as the boy starts to fuss. We could hide out on abandoned islands. Rouge stands to go check their map collection. As long as someone can go on supply runs, we won't run out of resources and we'll have the freedom to pack up and move elsewhere if the Marines get too close. It won't last forever, Buggy warns. One way or another, the world government will find out. We could never be that lucky. We don't need to. Rouge spreads a map out across the table, hand rubbing her chin as she scans for anywhere suitable. Just 5, maybe 7 years until Luffy is strong enough. There isn't really much a 7-year-old can do against a fleet of Marines, Shanks says unsurely, letting Luffy take one of his fingers to chew gummily. Oh, he'll be fine. Rouge waves offhandedly. He is the devil after all. She goes back to studying the map, but the dead silence that settles has her looking up. Her boys are looking at her with their jaws hanging open and Rouge's brows crease. Did Roger not tell you? No. As they watched Luffy grow up, Shanks couldn't really tell there was a devil in him. Oh, it certainly felt like it during his tantrums, but those were always quick and easily forgotten by the toddler. Shanks supposes it was an arbitrary name anyway. Rouge said the thing Roger met on Laugh Tale was definitely some kind of god, but the name itself didn't matter. The old man hadn't told them about that part. Shanks supposes it would have ruined the surprise. Luffy didn't feel like a devil. Though he definitely wasn't a normal kid. Shanks could have attributed that to his parentage. Rouge and Roger were both larger than life as is. There were plenty of things that Luffy did that could be supernatural, but then Ace was right there with him. Luffy was 4 now and Shanks remembered Ace at that age, running up to a crocodile with no fear, holding its jaw shut so it couldn't bite him while Buggy panicked and repeatedly hit the beast over the head. Luffy had done the same thing just last week, but with a Sea King. Unluckily for them, a passing ship had witnessed the feat and their little family had quickly fled the area. There had been rumors stirred up about Rouge in the wake of those first wanted posters, people on islands in the East Blue who remembered seeing her. But the longer they kept their heads down, the less people believed it. Now when Shanks and Buggy visited ports, common opinion was that the Pirate Queen had died along with her child. He and Buggy had both taken turns dragging each other out of bars before they could start a brawl over cursed blood comments. Ace was the most protective and loving person Shanks had ever seen. A little hellion at times, but if he noticed Luffy copying his behavior, he would listen to a scolding and show manners so his little brother would follow. Luffy himself was like sunshine incarnate. Which, yeah, he might be. None of them really knew what kind of god he was, only that he was responsible for the devil fruits, although that didn't explain much of anything. Luffy didn't have any of his own powers. Despite the fact he sank like a stone in the ocean. Most of the time it was pretty easy to forget, but sometimes Shanks was forcibly reminded. So, what's going on here? Shanks tries not to let his brow twitch or panic show, as his little brothers sit on the beach of Sixus. Several fruits of different shapes and sizes laid in the sand around them, more than 2 with bites taken out of them. By the seas, Rouge was going to kill him. She had just left with Buggy to get supplies, had to go with him because the tides around Sixus made normal sailing a no-go. Only Striker was strong enough to get them off Sixus. A recreation of her old skiff, upgraded so she could channel her Phoenix Fire into it for a burst of speed, and yes, Buggy had been very proud of that invention. Shanks had gotten distracted for 10 minutes setting up a fire. Ace wants a fruits. Luffy chirps, munching into a bone-white fruit that looks to be covered in fangs. You do? Shanks asks the 7-year-old, sitting down with them. Ace nods along seriously. They're cool, well, most of them. Luffy keeps bringing me weird ones. Are cool. Luffy insists with a huff, popping the last piece of the fruit into his mouth. He looks around at the beach at the half-dozen fruits spread about. It's a veritable gold mine and Buggy is going to be so sad that Shanks isn't keeping the children with grabby hands away from them. Shanks supposes they are technically Luffy's, or part of him. So he probably gets to do whatever he wants with them. At the moment, it seems like he wants to fish around the beach, grabbing a purple fruit with swirling patterns and holding it up proudly. Rubber. It turns you into rubber? Ace clarifies. Luffy humming aha, his head nodding rapidly. Lame. Is not. Luffy yells, teeth forming sharp points as he snarls. Shanks has a sneaking suspicion about what that last fruit was. So is. Ace shouts back. Kinda is, Anchor. Shanks shrugs when his littlest brother looks to him, making Luffy pout more. Not, Luffy mumbles, taking a bite of the fruit himself. Nika's fun. Shanks watches him bite into another devil fruit. Curling his hands into fists on top of his legs, Shanks fights to keep the panic out of his voice as he asks. Are you feeling all right there, Luffy? His little brother tilts his head, taking another big bite. Most people can't eat more than one devil fruit. I'm not a people, Luffy shrugs, utterly unbothered as he keeps chomping down, humming happily to himself. Does that? Does it taste good? Shanks asks. From everything he heard, devil fruits were meant to taste rotten. Buggy said the one he ate was the most disgusting thing he had ever tried, although, he may have just been trying to be dramatic and make Shanks guiltier. It's tasty. Luffy polishes off the last few bites, before grabbing a fruit that the tides push in. He holds it out to Ace. Eyes? Like the flowers one, but someone got that already. What does it do? Ace asks, the explanation not doing anything to help. Eyes? Luffy repeats, taking a mouthful. After he swallows, another set of eyes pop up on his cheeks. Then a line down his arm. They blink out of sync at Shanks as he stares back. Kinda gross, Ace says nonplussed, poking at the new eye on Luffy's cheek. It closes to avoid his finger, disappearing into the skin like a hidden seam. Plus you ate it already. Ah? Luffy seems to just realize this, pouting down at the half-eaten fruit in his hands. Want back? Luffy starts to reach into his mouth as if planning to pull the chunk out. Shanks stops him before he can jam his hands down and make himself throw up. Hey, don't worry about it, Shanks scruffs up his hair. Ace didn't want it anyway, did ya? Nah, Ace shakes his head, looking around at the sand. 3 of the fruits already have bite marks taken out of them, which means 3 more powers Luffy has that they're going to have to figure out. That is an absolutely terrifying ability, to eat as many devil fruit as you liked. Shanks reminds himself that those powers had once been part of a single being, the being that had eventually become his little brother. Shanks was going to have to talk to Buggy about that. His brother would properly freak out enough for the both of them. For now, Shanks smiles and focuses on his little brothers. So you're planning to leave all the water rescues to me, huh? He teases Ace. And here I thought our swimming lessons were going well. You'll watch out for us, Ace shrugs easily, not doubting Shanks is going to be there for a second. It makes the redhead grin. Guess I can't argue with that. Shanks looks around for an uneaten fruit. The sooner they find one, the sooner Luffy will stop summoning them. If his little brother keeps eating everything Ace rejects, he's going to become impossible to handle. What's that chest over there? Shanks points towards a small treasure chest being pushed up onto the shore by the waves. Shanks wonders if the ocean had been helping bring the fruits here. What is he saying? Of course it had. But for how long? Had the tides been gathering them here since they arrived at Sixus? Before then? When had Ace asked Luffy for a devil fruit? Had Luffy passed on his request to the ocean? Or did the ocean have nothing to do with it and the fruits were just drawn to Luffy when he called? Buggy couldn't find out about this ability, he'd monopolize all the world's devil fruits for Berry. Ace retrieves the chest, giving it to Shanks to crack open. Luffy is giggling before he can even manage. Good one. He says knowingly, rocking in place. Fire. Like mama? Ace lights right up, more so when Shanks opens the chest and they get a look at it. Yeah, Shanks probably would have guessed it had something to do with fire even without Luffy saying anything. Different fire, Luffy shrugs, and Shanks assumes that means Logia fruit, an elemental fruit or something close to it. What do you think, kiddo? Shanks holds the fruit out. Ace immediately tries to make a grab for it and he yanks it up high out of reach, teasing. Hey now, maybe I want it all to myself. No way, it's mine. Ace jumps up, trying to grab the fruit as Shanks juggles it between his hands. I wanted one first. Yeah, but maybe I don't want to be designated swimmer, Shanks provokes, pushing Ace back and holding the fruit far out of his reach. That's not fair. Ace complains, pushing against his hand and making Shanks laugh. The boy practically screeches as he mimics taking a bite. Shanks. The tone is dark, making shivers run down his spine. Luffy's face is serious and despite eating several devil fruits the past few minutes, this is the first time Shanks looks at him and thinks devil. It's for Ace. A pressure comes down around him and it's not like Conqueror's hockey. That's a human manifestation of will, it doesn't apply here. It's more akin to watching a storm, seeing waves tear through ships like they're paper. Not a direct threat but something implied. That if you don't respect the elements and take caution, you will fall to it next. Something unstoppable and absolute. Yeah, Lou, Shanks tries to keep his voice from trembling as he lowers the fruit. He doesn't think he manages. I was just teasing. The pressure instantly lets up and air enters Shanks' lungs. He doesn't know if that was Luffy's doing or him simply forgetting to breathe. Not nice. Luffy scolds, a cute little pout on his face. No, Shanks chuckles nervously, tossing the fruit over to Ace. It wasn't, sorry kiddo. Ace catches the fruit with a shrug. Whatever Shanks felt, his brother is obviously unaffected, but he does take a bite quickly, eyeing Shanks like he's going to start pestering him again. Halfway through the bite, he GGS and starts hacking. But it's too late for that. Shanks watches his throat bob as the fruit goes down. What was that? The boy shouts, throwing the rest of the fruit at Luffy. You said it tastes good. It does. Luffy insists, catching the orange fruit. He looks down at it with drool gathering in the corner of his mouth. Wanna finish it? Hell no. Ace is already trying to rub the taste off his tongue with the back of his hand. Shanks watches uneasily, stopping Luffy before he can take a bite. You're not going to get these powers too, are you? Nah, Ace has Luffy chirps, taking a big bite of the fruit that has Ace gagging at the sight. Shanks looks at his little brother, raising a brow. So? Feel any different? Not really. Ace raises his arms up, frowning at them. Then fire springs up on them and he yelps, falling back into the sand. Whoa! Shishishi, Luffy giggles. Like mama. Yeah, like mama, Shanks agrees, throwing sand on top of Ace to put him out. She's going to be so proud of you. Not before she killed Shanks for making her Spitfire's nickname literal. So Luffy, how many devil fruits did you eat? Shanks asks later that night. Their fire easily started thanks to a certain someone. He only ate 3 before you showed up. Ace shrugs, tearing into his meat. Apparently the taste of the devil fruit hasn't gone away just yet. Only 3, huh? Shanks says mildly, screaming inside his head about 6 devil fruits stuffed into one boy. Well, we should probably keep it at that, Luffy? His youngest brother shrugs, uncaring. He's absolutely ripping into his dinner with sharp teeth, finally able to outpace his brother's appetite. So, do you know what abilities you got from them? Shanks presses. He knows one sprouts extra eyes, Luffy's using the one that sharpens and blunts his teeth to eat dinner, and he mentioned one turning you into rubber. Admittedly, none of these seem particularly useful, but there's always the chance he scoffed down 3 Logia fruits beforehand. Luffy hums around his mouthful. A vein throbs in Shanks' temple as he tries to keep his temper. Wanna show us what they are? Ace called them lame. Luffy mopes, taking a break from eating to breath. His teeth return to a normal human shape. They were lame, Ace says unrepentant. Nua, look. Luffy lays both hands on the log he's sitting on. Shanks watches as the bottom of it starts to melt into the sand. Not like melting into a puddle though. Rather, it seems to be melding with the sand. The texture of wood swooping down and mixing with the grains of sand as if the two are becoming one object. The longer Luffy holds on, the more the log melts until it looks like a strange little hill and he holds his hands up. Tada! Luffy makes jazz hands, sitting happily on top of the mess he made. Alright, that's pretty cool, Ace allows surly. My fire's still better. Is cool. Luffy nods, ignoring the second part of the statement. He grins brightly as he looks to Shanks for praise, canines sharpening into fangs. It works on people's too. Is that so? Shanks asks faintly. He was definitely going to do his best from now on to keep Luffy away from devil fruits. Rouge had gotten back to 6s to a very sheepish son, another on fire, and another, well. Hey mama. Luffy asks, hanging upside down in front of her. Yes, my little anchor? She looks up from her book, finger placed where she left off. Which is colder? He asks, his hair sticking up on end. North Pole or South Pole? Have your brothers been arguing again? Rouge reaches up, having to stretch to run her hand through his hair, not that she has any hope of fighting against gravity and fixing it. Yep. Luffy grins, rocking in place on the ceiling. She readies to catch him in case he loses his grip and falls, although, he doesn't look like he's holding on at all, somehow stuck to the ceiling like gravity is simply holding him there. I'm not sure, but I think the North Blue is colder in general. She sits back, watching as he starts to crawl along the ceiling. I always found the South pretty mild. From there, mama? Luffy asks, climbing onto the wall. I am from there, Rouge smiles as Luffy sticks side on, tilting his head curiously. You were born there too, on a little island with no name. She had hoped that he would get to have the same homeland connection as her and his brother. But she supposes the fact he was born at all, and they both survived, was a miracle in itself. The gods were certainly on their side, clearly, as Luffy sits on level with her, jutting out from the wall while she sits on the couch. Luffy Island. He says with a massive grin, his fringe falling into his eyes. Yes, she smiles back, running her hands through it and tucking it behind his ear, Luffy Island. Damn it, not again, Buggy curses, feeling a crack as his hand slips. He holds out his hand to inspect the damage. His hands were in tatters these days from all of his experiments trying to upgrade the hibiscus hearth. He needed a big version of what he had on Rouge's striker, so it could be powered by fire. It was the only way to get off 6s, and would come in handy when running from the Navy. The problem was trying to make it efficient enough that it didn't take all of Rouge's strength for a small boost. Although, having 2 fire-based devil fruit users did help with that. What wrong? Luffy pops his head over Buggy's shoulder, not staying quiet and out of the way like Buggy told him. What's wrong? Buggy corrects, unwilling to let him get away with bad grammar just because he was small and cute. Shanks. Broke another nail. Can help. I don't need your fingers getting in my way when I'm trying to swing a, what the F dash. Buggy screeches as his nails start to rapidly grow, getting bigger and bigger until they're longer than the fingers themselves and starting to curl. Cut it out. Cut it out. Make it stop. Buggy screams his absolute head off, waving his hands around in a panic. He doesn't notice that they stop growing until he slows down and takes a breath. Cautiously, as if looking at a horror movie monster behind him, Buggy turns to his little brother, who has his arms crossed, moping. Was help. He mutters, glaring at Buggy, long now. Too long, don't ever do that to me again. He snaps, finally registering that this was one of the random devil fruit powers his little brother got when Shanks was being negligent. What a useless power anyway. Not useless. Look. Luffy holds up his hands. His nails grow too, but instead of getting long, they sharpen into thick claws, like that of a tiger. Buggy gulps. Yeah, all right. Put those away. He shouts, getting Luffy to pout more, but the claws do retract, morphing into normal human nails. He tries to stand, his long nails raking against the wooden floorboards. Buggy mutters idle curses. How is he meant to cut them? He can't hold anything like this. He's going to have to get Rouge to help, and Shanks is going to laugh at him the whole time despite this being entirely his fault. Luffy, you better not do this to me again. Buggy gestures, the weight of his hand feeling heavier now with the new and long additions. However, he won't deny that if his little brother can show some amount of restraint, it would be good for keeping his hands to manicured perfection, at least, not until you can avoid giving me claws. Luffy perks up at that, eager to use his freaky powers it seems. Well, Buggy can help with that. Because he's a fantastic brother, he smirks and asks, think you can do that to Shanks without him noticing you? Luffy's answering grin is literally sharp. Ace curls himself up in his spot in the crow's nest. They don't really need one since Buggy floats his eyes up way higher than the top of the mast of their little boat. So instead it's Ace's spot when he wants to be left alone. Not that he actually wants to be left alone. Shanks and Buggy had finally come back from another supply run. Luffy had straightaway run into Shanks' arms and demanded he come see a cool spot they discovered on the island, a pool with a waterfall that was mostly shallow enough for Luffy to sit and splash in the water. But there was one deep part so Mama wouldn't let them play unless Shanks was there to swim, just in case. Buggy had gone with them because he really likes the water. Ace didn't. He hated it now. No devil fruit users could swim, but Ace was made of fire. Water felt wrong, and it hurt. Like sitting in acid or something as it stung his skin. His brothers had asked if he wanted to come, and when Ace refused, they shrugged him off, going anyway. They didn't want to do any of the cool things Ace suggested because Luffy wants to do this now, we can go play there later. Which wasn't fair. Luffy always got to choose what they did. Everyone gave him attention first, and only when Luffy didn't want it did they turn to Ace. And Luffy always wanted attention. It made sense when he was really little. Mama said that babies and toddlers couldn't do much, so they needed a lot of time and attention to help them do things. Ace had been 4 when she explained that and told him he was a good big brother for being patient and understanding. Ace wanted to be a good big brother now too, but he didn't understand anymore. Luffy was 4 now. The same age he had been where he needed less attention. But Luffy still got all of it. But he was 4 now. He didn't need all that attention. Ace hadn't. But they still gave all their time to Luffy. Maybe they just liked Luffy more. Shanks was always carrying him around, going along with all of Luffy's whims. Buggy didn't, but he didn't go along with anyone's whims, not even Mama's. But he'll compromise anyway and, instead of chasing Luffy away, tell him to sit still and quiet, even if he knows Luffy never will. Mama spent a bit more time with Ace, but that was only because he kept setting things on fire and she knew best how to stop it. Training wasn't the same as playing games. Training wasn't the same as getting to sit in her lap while Mama told them stories about her and Dad's days as pirates. When she wasn't training with him, she was training alone. As soon as Buggy and Shanks had gotten back, she'd left, something about going on a flight around the island to make sure her wings were staying strong in case they ever needed to fly away. She did that a lot, going off to the far side of whatever island to practice her flames getting bigger and bigger. When Ace insisted he try the same, she had laughed him off. She said he should focus on little fires for now, that there was no rush. But she acted like there was one, staying up late night after night pushing herself until everything turned to ash and then some. She wasn't the only one. Buggy and Shanks would split off too, usually when someone was distracting Luffy or if Mama was around to watch him, and they'd spar each other. Those fights weren't the sort of roughhousing Ace did with his brothers. They fought like it was for real, Shanks even when he bled and Buggy when he was bruised black and blue. They were all preparing for something. Preparing to fight the world, and Ace knew why. He and Luffy shouldn't exist. The world didn't want them alive. What's got you looking so down, little Ember? Ace almost screeches, but he doesn't, not at all. Sparks fly as he looks up. Mama's grinning down at him, balancing on the top of the mast with her arms still turned into fiery wings. Did I scare you? She teases, hair falling over her face as she looks down at him. No, Ace pouts, crossing his arms and blushing furiously as she laughs. Not funny. It's not, Mama agrees, hopping down and landing lightly with a flap of her wings on the crow's nest rails. But that's not what's bothering you. Can you tell me what's wrong, Spitfire? You'll get sad. Ace curls up tighter into himself, and doesn't look up when he feels something warm settle around him. I'm okay with being a little sad, Mama assures. Her voice comes from above him, and when Ace peeks up, he mostly sees her hair as she leans over him. She sits on the railing with her legs bracketing him on either side, all-encompassing and warm. People want to kill me, Ace mumbles, but he's pretty sure Mama heard it because she freezes up. She doesn't say anything for a moment. Bile rises up in Ace's throat. Even if it's true, he doesn't want her to say it. A hand lands on his head and fingers start running through his hair. I'm the one they're after, Mama murmurs while working knots out of his hair. Because of me. No, not really, she softly reassures, her voice sounding far off even if she's right above him. It's because of your father. Ace frowns to himself. He remembered little bits of Dad, but it was all starting to get blurry. But not the stories his family told about him. Of the man who laughed and took on the world to be the king of the pirates. The reason they had to hide themselves away from the world. So it's Dad's fault? In a way I suppose, but not really, Mama says, which doesn't make much sense at all. Ace tilts his head up to give her a questioning look. She smiles at him in the sort of way she does when Luffy does something cute and stupid. Your dad's gone and the government could have left well enough alone, but your father was such a force to be reckoned with that they're still afraid of a dead man, and they should be. Dad was scary? He didn't remember him being scary. He was silly and fun. Not at all. Surely you remember him a little bit? He was an idiot, clumsy and stubborn. Ace nods along, that sounds about right. But mostly, he was selfish. She doesn't say it like an insult. Her smile is too fond, too soft, and she's staring out into the distance. That's a good thing? It was the best thing about him, she grins, looking back down at Ace and reaching over him to rub at his freckled cheeks. He loved me and he was selfish enough to want me to love him just as much. So he held none of his adoration back for even a moment, and how could I not fall for someone so earnestly brazen? I suppose that makes me selfish too. I wanted him back just as much. Mama has a special smile when she talks about Dad. It's so bright it makes even Ace feel all warm and fuzzy inside, so for Mama, it's gotta be the best feeling ever. He can't help but echo that smile. He wonders if Dad smiled like that too? Probably. It was hard not to around Mama. She and Luffy were both like that. You know, Ace, both of your parents are terribly selfish. Mama shifts around to sit next to him, hugging Ace to her side. We knew this would happen, what the world would think of you. If not because of Roger, then because of me. I certainly made my fair share of enemies. You're the coolest pirate ever, Ace nods seriously. Dad's stories were fun, Mama's were awesome. Aren't I? She smirks, squeezing Ace closer. Your dad was too, and we knew the world would be afraid of our kid, but oh Ace, we wanted you so badly. Ace leans into her side. She feels warm. No one else really does with him anymore. Even now, knowing all the pain it causes you, seeing you have to grow up on nowhere islands away from everywhere, I can't regret having you for even for a second. Even if you like Lou better? Ace asks quietly. He feels Mama stiffen up, and when she tries to look around at him, Ace tucks his face in. How do you figure that, Spitfire? You spend more time with him, and do what he wants, and he's special, right? Ace didn't really know how, but the way they looked at him sometimes. The way the ocean always reached for him. He was Luffy, but they called him the devil too. He ate all those devil fruits and now. We've been giving him more attention? Mama sighs. Ace nods his head slightly, fringe still shadowing his eyes as Mama pulls him closer. Baby, that is because your brother is chaos incarnate, and somehow more selfish than Roger and I combined. He knows how to scream for more attention and not stop until he gets it. Her fingers slide under his chin gently, guiding his head up to look at her. Ace lets her but can't quite meet her eyes, focusing on Mama's soft smile instead. Meanwhile you're far sweeter, always looking out for your brother and bearing with us. And maybe we were all selfish, taking advantage of that seemed to run in the family, but Mama said it wasn't a bad thing anyway. So what I need you to do is be selfish right back. Tell me what you want, stubbornly, over and over if you have to, and we'll see whose will holds out. Right now? Ace's brows furrow questioningly. All the time. Mama says firmly. I want spicy curry for dinner tonight. He starts. Buggy's cooking, and you know he hates spicy foods. Mama says, but Shanks always whines when Buggy adds leeks to whatever he's cooking. Going on, and even if Buggy didn't say anything, he stopped cooking with them a while ago. I'll annoy him until he adds enough chili. Ace decides, getting a proud smile from Mama. Good. I want to sit in your lap tonight when you tell stories. He looks her in the eyes, determination growing. You'll have to fight Luffy for it. Mama warns, her tone teasing. I'll win. Luffy may be another sort of weird, but he was still Ace's little brother, so he had to be weaker. That's just how that worked. I'm sure of it. Mama ruffles his hair. Ace giggles as he tries to push off her hand, but Mama is super strong. I want to go flying with you too. He wanted to be up in the sky. Just them. Let their fire loose and look like shooting stars in the night. All the time, right now. That's certainly something we can do. Mama grins, standing and picking up Ace with her. He climbs around onto her back and Mama starts to heat up and flames sprout up and down her arms. We have to go fast. He demands, clutching tight around her neck. Super fast, faster than ever. With loops too, right? Mama's arms turn to wings and she starts to lift off the ground. Obviously. Mama laughs and there's a swooping feeling in Ace's gut as they take off. You're our kid, alright. Mama laughs as Ace whoops. Ace holds on tight. Even if the world doesn't think that's a good thing, he's pretty sure it is. They end up following their strategy of bouncing between abandoned islands. Rouge looks after the kids while Shanks and Buggy go on supply runs. And with how much the D's eat, they are out often. That suits Buggy perfectly well. He's still selling his information. Going to new ports means meeting new suckers and making it harder for any Marines to track him down. It also does admittedly help to have Shanks at his side. His cheery demeanor and rose-tinted vision of piracy makes for a better sales pitch than Buggy could ever manage. But not to worry, because Shanks makes himself a nuisance in other ways and the world returns to balance. Buggy stirs as he hears Shanks leave the hibiscus hearth. He sighs at the redhead's actions, thinking he's sneaking out. This is an old song and dance from the months they spent making it from the Grand Line to Loungetown. Buggy sends an eye out after him and grumbles as he pulls on his least flashy clothes, something dark and plain along with a hat or hood that covers his hair. Shanks heads to the bar furthest away from where they docked, having probably already scanned the town for them when they were gathering provisions. Buggy waits until he sees Shanks go in before leaving the boat. He catches up with his eye soon enough, popping it back into place. He waits for another group to head into the bar and slips in behind them. It's pretty shitty inside if you ask Buggy. The smell of vomit permeates the air mingling with the booze. He scowls at the floor, knowing people probably never bother to clean it. The drunks around don't mind either way. They're already laughing and singing off-key, a red-head idiot at the center of the revelry. Already managing to become best friends with each and every single person in the bar. Buggy skirts around the grabbing hands trying to pull him in and sets up in a shadowy corner. Arms crossed and glaring through the crowd to Shanks. The barmaids are harried, moving quickly around trying to serve everyone, grabbing for their attention so they don't bother or even notice Buggy who's trying to make himself as invisible as possible. There's a mix of pirates and sailors in the bar, but ones with hard-looking faces that usually means they trade in illicit business. It's probably the worst possible place for a pretty young redhead to be. They keep shoving drinks into Shanks' hands both in good spirit and not. The idiot doesn't question a single thing, too busy trying to drown himself. With his arms crossed, no one notices Buggy's fingers missing. He keeps them hidden through the room. Under chairs and tables, one hides in the folds of Shanks' clothes. Not that he notices. Most are stationed at the bar, switching drinks around as they are spiked. Feeding drags back to the BSTRDS who try it. When he can't manage that, he sneaks them under cups and makes sure the drink spills before it can make it to Shanks. There used to be a lot of this back on the Grand Line. Slavers were numerous there, and while the trade is less prevalent in the East Blue, Shanks has a talent for making the worst choices. Buggy lets himself settle into the flow of things, keeping alert and attentive so nothing can slip by his notice. He may not be as strong as Shanks, he may not be a conqueror like him, but he is cautious. The crew might have judged him for it, but, when they left, it was Shanks who kept Buggy alive through the dangers and people hunting them. While it was Buggy who kept Shanks alive when all of that pressure got to be too much and he decided to try and forget. The bar doesn't end up kicking them all out until far too late into the night, and it's only because most of the place has emptied out. Shanks is slumped over a table at that point and has to be dragged out by the owners. Buggy slips out unnoticed, sticking to the shadows of the street as Shanks stumbles down it. Not towards the boat because he's an idiot. Wherever he was planning to go, he doesn't get far. He ends up collapsing against some barrels, sinking down with his back to the wall and leg thrown over one of the barrels he knocked over. His straw hat slumps over his eyes and Buggy counts 3 minutes until his breath slows and the snoring starts. Buggy groans and settles down across the street, sitting on some crates stacked on the pier. Lamps have been lit along the dock, faintly illuminating them both. It's not the best spot. The best is one where Buggy can pull some trash over Shanks so no one will notice him. As is, Buggy makes sure he's visible too, detaching himself at the waist without cutting his clothes so when he floats his torso he looks taller. The finishing touch is taking out his throwing knives, they've been due for a sharpening anyway. People walk by and when their gaze lingers too long on the slumbering redhead, Buggy rakes his sharpener against the knife. The harsh sound mostly manages to get them to hurry along. But of course, there are the stubborn ones who need to be taught a lesson. Back off, Buggy growls at the pirates leaning over Shanks, purposefully deepening his voice. Or what? A man twice Buggy's size scoffs. He pointedly makes the metal on the edge of his blade ring, oh scary. The man pulls a gun and Buggy supposes it's just that kind of night. He throws his knife before the trigger can get pulled, the pirate yowling as metal buries itself in his wrist. Yeah, that's going to be a hell of a recovery. His friends both pull their weapons, one a gun, the other a sword. Buggy rolls to the side as the sword comes down on the spot he was sitting, cutting into the wood and getting stuck there. The East Blue really is the weakest sea, these guys can't even cut through wood. Buggy kicks the guy in the groin while he tries to tug out his blade. As he doubles over, Buggy smashes his knee into the sap's face for good measure. They slump down as a shot rings out. Buggy's head detaches from his neck, the bullet sailing through the gap. It was a pretty decent shot, too bad. The man screams in horror as his disembodied head turns. Buggy swears the man is about to faint, knocking him out isn't even worth it, he still punches the sucker in the jaw. He falls back against the barrels Shanks had been half sprawled over. The redhead doesn't even have the courtesy to jolt awake. Instead opening his eyes and looking slowly around. Buggy? Shanks asks groggily, struggling to push himself up. Hey idiot, Buggy walks over to the first guy with his knife still sticking out of his hand. He pulls it out and the man howls, quickly shut up by a kick to the face. I heard a commotion and knew you were involved somehow. Don't remember, Shanks slurs, rubbing his head and knocking off his oh-so-precious hat. Yeah, well, if you're going to be a nuisance, at least be a quiet one so I can get some sleep, Buggy scoffs, turning with a flourish so he can head down the street to their boat, turn down an alley without Shanks noticing and double back. If the redhead decides not to be an idiot for once, he'll follow. Wait. Shanks' cry is desperate as he makes a wild grab for Buggy's pants. He pauses and looks back only mildly surprised to see the start of tears. Don't leave me? Sees, you're such a sloppy drunk, Buggy gives a put-upon sigh, crouching in front of Shanks. He reaches out to pick up the hat, but the idiot misinterprets, falling into his arms. I'm sorry, don't leave, don't dash. I'm not going anywhere, shut up. Buggy snaps, jamming the straw hat back onto red hair. You're so annoying. I'm sorry, Shanks repeats but this time it shudders out of him like a sigh of relief. His hot breath and snot are stuck into Buggy's stomach, the wet patch uncomfortable and gross. At least let me sit down if you're going to go all octopus, Buggy scolds, pushing Shanks' shoulders back to get free. The redhead whines even as Buggy makes sure not to let go as he gets into a more comfortable position, back leaning against the wall. Shanks collapses and curls up into his side, arms wrapped so tightly around Buggy it hurts to breathe. Don't leave, Shanks murmurs into his shoulder. I'm not leaving, Buggy reaches up and tugs at Shanks' hair, his arm happening to fall across his back that way. You did, Shanks accuses, unable to see Buggy's wince. He had left, and he always thought it would be Shanks that leaves him first. Being the one to walk away had been strange, and entirely unpleasant. How practically everyone else in their life pulled it off, Buggy didn't know. It only took a few months and he was right back where he started. How had the rest of the crew managed to stay away when it felt like Buggy had permanently lost a limb? Yeah, well I'm not going to do that again, am I? He snaps, tugging at Shanks' hair more. Promise? He mumbles. You are such a child, yes I promise, Buggy growls it out but it doesn't make it any less true. Doesn't mean Shanks believes it any less. The redhead sighs and sinks deeper into Buggy's side. Not gonna leave you either. I don't care, Buggy grouses and leaves his hand where it is on Shanks' back. Shanks brings the hibiscus hearth into a cove leading up to a small island, weighing anchor where it's deep enough not to damage her. Coming up to it, he could catch sight of rooftops spaced apart up there. The village was little but it would be good enough for a resupply. Shanks pulls the dinghy up the sand and lifts the overexcited 6-year-old out. Now what are the rules? He asks Luffy lightly as the boy squirms in his arms. Don't tell anyone about Mama or Dad, stay close enough to hear you, and come get you if I see any Marines, Luffy recites dutifully, wriggling the whole time. Come on Shanks. Alright, Shanks chuckles and Luffy outright leaps for the steep cliffs of the cove. He sticks there, climbing up the craggy rock with ease but using none of the obvious footholds provided as he scurries along it. Shanks sighs, watching his brother fondly as he acts like a creature. He supposes there's nothing to be too worried about. Luffy had come with him on a few supply runs now and so far he'd followed all the rules. Even if he didn't, his little brother's strength and devil fruit abilities were getting strong enough he could easily defend himself against the average grunt. Shanks throws the empty bags over his shoulders, following the path up to the island proper. Luffy scrambles over the edge of the cliff and Shanks keeps track of him through the rustling of leaves and annoyed squawks of birds. A cry rings out that sounds almost like a bird but is quickly followed by a thud and some spirited cursing. Shanks changes course, leisurely heading for the commotion. Pushing some branches aside, he sees a young man probably about Shanks' age, pressed back against a thick tree trunk. He's got a slingshot in his shaking hands that is trained on Luffy. The little gremlin couched on the side of a tree, neck bent back unnaturally to peer at the poor guy. Please don't shoot my little brother, Shanks drawls, some good-natured humor in his voice as the guy's attention snaps to him. I'd hate to have to beat you up for it. Brother? His voice wavers and looks back at Luffy who's smiling widely at him. Although it looks more like a threat with his teeth growing sharper in excitement. Lou, stop being a terror, Shanks chides with a laugh, holding his arms out. I was just saying, hi. Luffy pouts, jumping down into his arms. Shanks scoops him up easily. Really now? Did you remember to introduce yourself? Luffy unfortunately hadn't really gotten to talk to anyone outside of the family his whole life. He and Ace were only recently allowed out with Shanks on the occasional supply run. He was still figuring out the whole meeting people thing and trying to understand why everyone reacted to his powers even worse than Buggy. Hi, I'm Luffy. He waves sunnily, and Shanks sees the moment the guy's guard comes crumbling down. Yassop, nice to meet you? He asks hesitantly, looking at Shanks unsure. The redhead simply grins and moves his hand out. Shanks, nice to meet ya. He helps hoist Yassop up, the guy yelping at his strength. You know somewhere around here for a good drink? Mama says you're not allowed, Luffy sing-songs. Mama's not here, Shanks sings right back. Yeah, my old man's got a bar actually. Yassop dusts the dirt off his pants, a small smile playing on his face at the brother's antics. Lead the way. Shanks ends up carrying Luffy all the way there, but thankfully his brother doesn't squirm too much. Seems like Yassop has a talent for storytelling and is busy reassuring Luffy that he wasn't scared of him. He claims instead that he had once battled a demon from the deep that could scale sheer walls hundreds of feet tall and Yassop thought it had come back as revenge for its humiliating defeat. Luffy falls for it hook, line and sinker, asking a million questions, but to Yassop's credit, he never gets stumped and even manages to slip into some more fantastical tales. The bar is completely empty when they arrive but Yassop quickly slips behind the counter, moving about with familiarity as he retrieves a couple of glasses. Shanks drops Luffy on one of the bar stools, the kid immediately entertaining himself by spinning in circles. No one really comes around during the day, and my pops has been taking more time off, 'cause of his health but I can pour a drink just fine. What are you feeling? Nothing too strong, Shanks says regrettably. Buggy's not here to bail him out and like hell he's getting sloshed while looking after Luffy, and cut me off at 2, no matter what I say. You got it, Yassop agrees easily, leaning against the counter to focus on Luffy. And you, little man? Nothing strong, Luffy imitates Shanks seriously, and cut me off at 2. They both chuckle at that and Shanks has to bite his cheek before he flat out loses it. Yassop turns around to the wall full of bottles, his shoulders shaking. Alrighty then, my finest juice for both of you, he says, voice nothing but mirthful. He grabs out a couple of identical bottles and starts pouring them into glasses like it's a fancy cocktail. Luffy oohs and ahs and Yassop times a distraction just right so that he looks away and misses the bottles being switched out. Luffy doesn't notice anything and the two look similar enough in color that he's just excited about sharing a drink with Shanks. The redhead makes sure Luffy's holding the glass properly and isn't going to drop it before taking his own. He holds it out to Yassop as a silent toast, commending the man. So what brings you to syrup? Yassop asks, leaning against the bar. He doesn't pretend to clean for the sake of it like most bartenders. I didn't see any trading ships come in today. We docked at the cove back there. Shanks makes a vague gesture behind himself, just dropping by for supplies on our travels. Traders yourselves? Explorers? Pirates? The last part is teasing but if it doesn't make Shanks' heart sing, longing to claim the title. He is a pirate, has been his whole life. Just traveling, haven't really found somewhere to settle down. He inclines his head towards Luffy while the kid's not paying attention. Ah, gotcha. Yasopp cringes to himself but quickly moves the topic along, not wanting to linger or press about what exactly Luffy's deal is. Shanks smiles softly at the man, more than happy to indulge the rest of his questions and ask a few of his own. Shanks learns the reason behind the slingshot. Gunshots would only freak out the villagers, so he keeps his target practice quiet. Yasopp asks about the straw hat. Shanks listens to a probably exaggerated story of Yasopp chasing pirates off from his village with only 2 pebbles. Luffy says Shanks wouldn't have even need the pebbles and Yasopp laughs like it's a joke. It's when Yasopp is launching into another story that Shanks starts to notice Luffy's chair sinking. He looks down at the floor to see the legs of the stool melding with the wooden planks. Luffy's holding the seat, not paying attention as he's enraptured by Yasopp's retelling of the time he built a house on the back of a giant turtle. "Hey Lou," Shanks knocks on his brother's head, his hand bouncing back against the rubber, "you're melting." Whoops, Luffy looks down, not at all sheepish as he kicks his legs out. Wah-dash, Yasopp leans over the counter to look and his eyes go wide. What? The chair. "Pick it back up before you lose it completely," Shanks warns, lifting Luffy down to the ground. "It's not nice to break other people's stuff." "Sorry, story guy." Luffy apologizes cheerfully, grabbing onto the stool's legs. He lifts it up and it's like the legs are getting sked back up, reforming back into shape as they're pulled away from the floor. Yasopp's jaw drops, silently opening and closing, trying to find the words, any words, when Luffy beams back up at him. Thanks, kid," he settles on and Shanks grins. Runs a bar and is good to Luffy? No way he's letting this one go. Buggy would yell at him for it, but it was still less arbitrary than what Dad did. Luffy gets tired after using his ability, or maybe he was already crashing. He climbs into Shanks' lap without a word and makes himself comfortable before passing right out. Shanks huffs a light laugh and wraps a hand around his shoulder to make sure he doesn't slip away. "Aren't you just the cutest?" Yasopp teases, pouring Shanks a new drink. Yeah, Shanks says sarcastically and picks up the glass to hide his pleased smile. He grimaces at the sweet smell without the sharp edge of alcohol. "Can't I at least get this spiked?" "You said to cut you off at 2, Yasopp reminds, laughing at Shanks' outright pout. "Come now, you've got to look after your little brother, don't you?" "Of course," Shanks sighs, holding Luffy closer. It's probably for the best that he doesn't drink anyway. He always feels like shit afterwards, and it's not like they live near any bars close enough to go for a round 2. But Shanks does smirk up at Yasopp and says, "Unless you want to try babysitting?" Nah, I don't think I'm cut out for kids," he says, which is bullshit for a man looking fondly at his sleeping brother, who he had been indulging all day. "You're good with him," Shanks reassures, brushing stray hairs out of Luffy's face. "Not interested in having any?" "My partner is and I want to give her some." "I do," Yasopp sighs, leaning back against the bar and staring up at the ceiling, "but I don't think I'm cut out for it. Not just the father stuff but the staying stuff, you know?" Shanks' throat goes dry and he hates the way his hand shakes as he goes to pick up his cup. The sweet taste of juice is grating and he desperately longs for the burn of alcohol. "Yeah, I know," he forces the words out. "I want to go out to sea, explore." Yasopp lights up, making wide gestures at the ceiling. The spark in his eyes is familiar. Shanks has seen it in most people he calls his. "Do you ever feel like the sea is calling you?" "All the time," he admits, fingers running through Luffy's hair. "Yeah, so I don't think I could just leave a kid behind." The glass in Shanks' hand shudders dangerously. "I might not be a golden child, but I'm not a scumbag." Shanks takes a deep breath and forcefully relaxes his grip. Yasopp isn't talking about them. He's talking about himself. Talking himself out of something he wants specifically so that won't happen. Doesn't that hurt all the more? That he's trying not to let his selfishness affect someone else, someone he cares about, but Shanks wouldn't have given up his time with his captain for anything. He didn't regret that the man took him in. Didn't even really regret that he left him. It was unavoidable. It was the fact that he left Shanks alone. They all did. "I think it's fine," he wraps an arm around Luffy, holding him close. One day he will go out to sea. He'll leave Luffy behind, but he'll never leave him alone. As long as you keep in touch. "Really? Is that all?" Yasopp questions. There's still a levity to his voice, like he hasn't noticed the dark cloud hanging over Shanks. Don't kids need more than that? Probably, and this theoretical future kid might hate Shanks for saying it. For encouraging his father to leave, but it's not the absence that stings Shanks the most. It's how easy it seemed to be, to leave them on that beach and not look back. The clawing question and deep dread in his gut, wondering if they ever cared at all. If they were glad to be rid of him. If there was something wrong with Shanks. Sometimes just knowing people care is all it takes. Yasopp finally seems to recognize the dark tone, looking worriedly at Shanks. So he does what he always does when the doubts and fears get to be too much, he slides a smile in place and holds up his cup. Can I get another drink? One more, and if you ask again I will wake your brother up. Ha! Shanks is definitely keeping him. Deal. The striker schemes over the waves. Shanks, the lunatic, has a stupid grin on his face and his mouth is probably more salt than spit at this point. The little pyromaniac keeps channeling fire into the furnace, making them go faster. Slow down you morons. Buggy screams over the surf, only getting the 10-year-old and man who acts like a 10-year-old to laugh at him. His only saving grace is that he can see the island they've made base at on the horizon. So instead, Buggy closes his eyes against the sea spray and holds on tight. Really, for a devil fruit user, Ace needs to have more fear about being on a rickety narrow boat that they could fly off of at any second. Loosen up, Bugs. Shanks pats his shoulder, shouting to be heard. That would be a death sentence, you fool. Hey Ace, we're getting close, what you say we do a lap around the island? No. The chortling he gets in response is not fair. Thankfully, neither of the menaces pull through on the threat. Probably because Ace's fire is starting to splutter out. They guide Striker up next to the hibiscus hearth, throwing up ropes to lash it to the boat. Hey Mum. Luffy. Could one of you get that? Shanks shouts up. Usually they're right on deck when they come back from supply runs. Mostly because Luffy's excited for food, but sometimes it's because he's happy to see his brothers. Hello? Are they not up there? Ace frowns, pulling the hatch of the engine shut so no sea water gets into the mechanism. They could be on the beach, Buggy says even as he's shielding his eyes from the sun to look at the island. He doesn't catch sight of them, but Luffy could be playing further in. Hey Bugs, can you dash? Yeah, I got it, Buggy interrupts Shanks, detaching his feet and floating up on deck. He makes quick work of the knots and throws a rope ladder down to the other two. You better bring my feet up. On it. Shanks shouts back up cheerily, making Buggy roll his eyes. He pokes his head into the cabin. Sure enough, there's no sign of Rouge or Luffy. He comes back out, a frown on his face. Not there? Shanks, the genius, guesses, Buggy's feet under one arm and a bulging bag held up on his shoulder. Must be on the island, Buggy mutters, looking out over it. It's another one of those no-name places, although this one is a good deal bigger than what they've been weighing anchor at these past 7 years. Apparently people don't settle here because dangerous beasts like to come up from the water during nesting season, which should be soon, and they'd planned specifically now to come despite Buggy's warnings. Something about training and meat. He just cursed them out for being reckless. Let's unpack and go hunt them down, alright? Shanks drops Buggy's feet and ruffles Ace's hair to get the frown off the Hellion's face. It's good enough as a distraction and they actually get unpacking done quicker without Luffy there trying to get his hands in everything and swipe food. Buggy even manages to pack extra provisions unseen in a secret compartment, keeping it safe from the others' ravenous appetites until they absolutely needed it. They head off quickly to the island, mostly letting Ace lead the way as he runs around the forest. He starts to slow down quicker than usual, exhausted from his ride on Striker. Buggy really needs to work on the engine some more, figure out an efficient way to substitute the fire so it isn't solely relying on the two flame users' devil fruits. Although, maybe it is a good thing to tire Ace out, Buggy can already smell burning. Ace, stop setting the DMN forest on fire. That's not me. Ace scowls, popping his head out of a bush at Buggy's side. He blinks down at his little brother. Sure enough, the smell of smoke is coming from up ahead. Buggy and Shanks share a glance, the redhead's expression hardening. Ace, stay close to Buggy, okay? He looks back, waiting for the boy to nod and latch onto Buggy's hand before storming ahead. Buggy is only a few steps behind him, one hand slipped into his pocket where he stores his knives. Ace is holding his hand so tight it threatens to cut off circulation by the time they find a break in the trees. Everything is smoldering. Most of the trees burnt down to embers with only a few husks that remain standing. The entire side of the island from the trees down to the sand is scorched. Buggy has no idea how much of that fire was blue and how much was from somewhere else. There are bodies strewn across the ground, patches of white seen through the smeared ash. Sheet. Buggy scrambles to cover Ace's eyes but it's already too late. Rouge. Luffy? Mum. They're not here, Shanks' voice is flat. Buggy watches his back, the tremble in the line of his shoulder as a mounting pressure starts to build around them. They aren't here. A burst of Conqueror's hockey knocks out anything that had still been living on the island. There's no change to the Marines, and whatever ship had brought them here is long gone. They had been careless, had they? Most of the world assumed Rouge was dead, despite the Marines circling her wanted poster every now and then. Common opinion was that the pirate queen died in childbirth and took the prince with her, they didn't even know about the second prince. But Rouge had kept her head down even when they started taking the boys on supply runs to stretch their legs. No one should have been able to connect two random children in the east to Roger. Buggy had been so careful. Was it a coincidence? A marine ship just happening to pass by? Or had they been covert for once, secretly tracking and observing the group's movements until their suspicions were confirmed? They hadn't heard any news on the island they just left, so the news wasn't released yet, or it was being printed as they stood here, frozen, staring at the carnage. Rouge and Luffy. Their mother and little brother. They weren't here. They had to go get them.
Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.